Good morning and welcome. This is the meeting of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Study Agency. We have board members participating in person at our offices in Fresno, Bakersfield, and Modesto. We'll do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation via Zoom and webcast. Before we begin, here are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices such as your cell phone. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment. The clerk will recognize any public attendee who has indicated they wish to speak. Thank you. So for starters, we'll get call to order.
Good morning. For roll call, Mr. Chiesa,
I'm here. Here.
Mr. Couch, Mr. McCauley,
Here.
Mr. Mendez,
Here.
Mr. Pereira.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Sheklian.
Here.
Mr. Rickman, Mr. Robinson.
Here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, next we'll stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, looking for a motion for approval of the consent calendar.
Move approval.
Okay. Supervisor Shuklian, do I hear a second?
Second.
Supervisor Mendez.
And I'll call for public comment. This is on the study agency consent calendar. Are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment on this?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto on this item?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none online, I'll call roll for this. Mr. Chiesa,
Aye.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Ms. Sheklian,
Aye.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you for that. Next up, do we have any public comments at this time?
Okay.
And I just want to make a clarification for those that may be wanting a public comment on the governing board meeting agenda. This is the study agency meeting, so this will be followed immediately by the governing board meeting. Sometimes a little bit of confusion about this meeting versus the next meeting. So I just wanted to note that this is the study agency meeting. There'll be another opportunity for public comments during the governing board meeting that will follow this meeting right after this meeting. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment in Bakersfield on the study agency?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comment in Modesto on the study agency?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on the study agency? I have one coming to the podium.
Morning, Manuel.
Good morning, Manuel Cunha, President of East State Farmers League. And I'd like to support the study agency 1000%. When it was started in 91, 92, some of you weren't born. But it's been a tremendous research team by the collaboration between EPA, USDA, CDFA, ARB, the San Joaquin Valley Air District, and all of the groups, including Edwards Air Force Base and many others. And the study agency was to find the real facts in science. And if it wasn't for the study agency, we wouldn't be doing a lot of the positive things we do that are based on facts versus just a bunch of innuendos or a bunch of hype. when there's no facts. But the study agency, we hope continues and doesn't stop because we still have issues to deal with when we go to the 9 microgram. But I just wanted to comment that the city agency's been here for a long time, and it is the real arm of how we resolve air quality issues, and we have it, and we base it on facts. And especially for agriculture, it's been a tremendous asset for us to follow a guideline of real research. So again, I thank and support the study agency's continual efforts moving forward with this air district and this San Joaquin Valley staff and everybody. So Samir, thank you.
Manuel, I will say I feel a little singled out by that comment, but I'll let you know I was born in 1986, not 1991. Okay, so thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Manuel, and thank you for all your efforts over the years. All right.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment on the study agency? I do have one comment online. Estefania Avalos. Ms. Avalos, are you requesting to comment on the study agency or the general governing board item?
Hi,
Com-
so
agenda.
I'm with the Linguistica team, so I was just wondering if I can.
Oh, okay. That will be at the beginning of the governing board meeting. Thank you.
Okay,
No further comments online.
no further comments. Okay. Seeing none, do we have any governing board member comments? No, no comments? Any other business? All right, moving right along. Well, we've already done the consent calendar, I guess. So that's it. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.
Excellent job. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the governing board meeting to order. The time is 9:07 a.m. I don't want to read everything that Member Robinson had just gone over, but I do want to remind all the folks online. So this is our regular governing board meeting. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. After each agenda item, the chair will announce public comment, and the clerk will recognize any public attendees who have indicated they wish to speak. Roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Couch? Ms. Escutia Brayton? Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. McCauley?
Here.
Mr. Mendez?
Here.
Dr. Pacheco Warner?
Here.
Mr. Pereira?
Here.
Mr. Preciado?
Here.
Mr. Reyna?
Here.
Mr. Rickman? Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Dr. Sheriffs?
Here.
Ms. Shiklian?
Here.
Ms. Nguyen? Here. Mr. Chiesa?
I am here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum. And at this point, Chair Chiesa, we'd like our translation team to come give instructions in Spanish for the translation services that will be provided.
Great, thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Christina. My partner Margot is online. We're from Linguistica. We'll be providing interpretation this morning at your meeting. So I'll go ahead and give those instructions in Spanish. Thank you. Sí, hola, buenos días. Yo soy Cristina. Con mi compañera Margot vamos a ser las intérpretes esta mañana, proveyendo interpretación simultáneo. Si están aquí presentes, por favor nos avisan y podemos proveerle un dispositivo. Y también si quieren venir a dar un comentario público, van a proveer interpretación también. Y para los que están conectados en línea, si están conectados usando una computadora o tableta, van a ver el icono del mundo en la parte inferior de su pantalla que dice interpretación. Va a seleccionar su idioma de preferencia, que en este caso es el español, y luego le va a hacer clic a silenciar el audio original. Y es el mismo proceso si está utilizando un teléfono, tableta o iPad. Y luego le va a dar clic al done o finalizado y habrá completado la configuración de interpretación en Zoom. Y también pueden dar comentario alzando la manita en línea o mandando un correo electrónico al correo que van a poner en la pantalla. Muchas gracias.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, now I'd like to take a moment, if that's okay with everyone, a moment of silence in memoriam of Tony Reyes, who passed suddenly Yeah, he was an accountant, a longtime employee here at the Air District Board. And if everyone could please bow your head for a second. Thank you all. The thoughts are with your family.
Mr. Chair, if I could just say a couple of words about Tony Reyes, and thank you for having that moment. He was actually here for 18 years, long-term employee of the district, served in a lot of different capacities, and worked really hard to continue his growth here, really set an example for our staff here in terms of that ability to challenge himself and really go for it, as he worked his way into different promotions. He was an amazing employee. He was a friend to many of us here, a good colleague, somebody with a big sense of humor, a lot of community service. He was a big part, for example, of the Lions Club, and just in his off work life was a big champion of community service, avid cyclist, somebody who was very well known throughout the district and very loved by all of us here. Somebody I spoke to very often to just catch up on things, and was a big part of the finance team and the whole district team. He is survived by his wife, Diana, and daughter, son, and daughter-in-law, 4 grandchildren, parents and siblings, all of who he adored and spoke a lot about. So a lot of us got to know his family through picnics and all the stories that he would bring in with pride about various graduations and other things that we all had the pleasure of hearing about. So I just wanted to thank Tony for his service and just being dedicated public servant, helping us clean up the air in the San Joaquin Valley. He's going to be greatly missed by me personally, by all the staff, and by just the organization and all the stakeholders that we deal with as a whole. Just wanted to say a couple of words about him, and again appreciate the moment of silence for him. We're all grieving his loss and appreciate this time.
Thank you for those kind words. Very nice. All right, we will move on to item number 4, the consent calendar. Does any member want to pull any item? Seeing none, we'll go out for public comment.
Are there any members of the public in Modesto that would like to comment on the consent calendar?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment on the consent calendar?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none and none online.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Please call the roll.
Thank you. Through the chair, I also see that Supervisor Couch is here. Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira, Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs,
Arg.
Ms. Shucklian,
Aye.
Ms. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa.
Yes.
Through the chair, motion passes.
What the heck is ARD?
Well, I thought it was such a great I.
Sound like you were a pirate or something.
Just following
the lead.
Okay, we're going to move on to
Like,
item 5, which is public comment period. Is the time made available for to comment on public matters within the board's jurisdictions. Remember that items 7 through 13 will have individual public comment period. It is requested that comments on those items be made at that time. Attention is called to the fact that the board is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment?
Thank you. Do we have any public comment in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Modesto that would like to comment?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? I do have one coming up to the podium.
Welcome.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, board members. I'm going to piggyback off of what Samir mentioned. I'm here today to speak about our former colleague, Tony Reyes. my attempt is to get through this, but this is definitely a very difficult subject. So if I can't get through it, I will respectfully dismiss myself. Before I begin, I just wanted to extend my gratitude to Samir for what he did when the news came out. It's my understanding that he was also dealing with some trials in itself, and yet as a leader, he was able to pull it together and lead this organization at its most difficult time. And so for that, sir, I just wanted to say thank you. I wanted to share my experience with our former colleague, Tony Reyes. He was a patriot. He definitely loved working here at the district. I first got introduced to him when we started carpooling together. And that's a memory in itself, because when I gave him the address home where to pick me up, he says, "You're living at a warehouse?" I says, "Yeah." "All right, cool." So we just continued on that path. Over the years, we had a really good rapport. We talked about a lot of things. And one of the areas had to do with mentoring, because if there's anybody that I knew that really tried to make his way into making a difference at this organization, it was him. And every now and then, when opportunities presented itself for promotion and he didn't get it, it was a challenge. And we would sit and we would talk about it. And during those times, we always looked at it and said, the interview's not over. Take this on as a challenge, accept it. What is it that you can do that can separate yourself from everybody that you're competing against? And we started going down that path. And it was so exciting to finally come to that point where he says, "Hey, I did it." And I was, congratulations. And from there, we continued on with our friendship. Over the years, we started sharing a lot of what I call war stories, because he always seemed to want to talk about my experience prior to coming to the district. And I didn't realize how much he was paying attention to those stories until I shared one story that my daughter shared with me. She's also an active duty service in the Marines. And I try to keep it short, but she was tasked to go do something, and she had an interesting experience. And it was through that process that we were talking about what had taken place. I realize that I'm coming close to the end. If I can request a couple more minutes.
You have the chair's prerogative of the floor, so continue on.
Thank you, sir. So during that time, she was talking to me about how her senior leadership had tasked her to go out to go pick up some water because they were short. So it was her first opportunity to travel in a Humvee. And she was talking about all these things, and I kind of lost myself a little bit, because I'm like, you're nuts. You're doing some things that are unsafe. And she's like, "Dad, you used to do that stuff before. What are you talking about?" And so I had to pull back and recognize that she's going through the same experiences that I did. So I shared that same story with Tony, and Tony stopped me. He says, "You know that she's right." And I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Do you remember that time when you stole that 7-ton? And I says, "No." And he's like, "Yeah, remember?" And I go, "I don't remember stealing it. I was just borrowing it." And so to give you some background on what that was, in 2003, I was forward deployed under Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I was the individual in charge during that evening duty. And we had an operation where we had groups that were coming in. They had been out for 3 days. And we had comm coming in telling us that we had a forward base that ran out of fuel. And during that time, it was extremely hot. There was a lot of stuff going on. And I had shared with them that there wasn't anybody available to be able to refuel this camp. And I didn't want to pull the driver out to go and do this, because I knew that he had been out for quite some time. And so I encouraged him to let me know where the kill switch was, because when you go through training, they don't reveal where the kill switch is to keep people like us from going in and stealing the vehicle. Sorry, borrowing it. And so I implored him, "Look, you need to get your rest, because you need to be ready for the next day's run. I'll take care of it." So I went out, I took my small armament, and I went out unsecured to go get that unit refueled. Came back and well, the story is that they got taken care of and the unit was able to do what they needed to do. So I told Tony I didn't steal it. This was a different experience. He says, but you know what? He goes, you did what you did in a real-time situation. And your daughter's doing this in training in preparation for a potential that may happen if she gets deployed. I was like, right on. You're absolutely right. And those are the memories that I had with them. It is going to be hard, but there was some things that he did that will always stick. November 10th is one of the biggest ones because for those that know, November 10th is the Marine Corps birthday. And he was always one that would reach out to every Marine and say, happy birthday, Marine. Gonna miss him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And based on the lack of dry eyes I've seen here, he obviously made an impact. Thank you for sharing those stories. And you earned that time. Thanks for your service. Tell your daughter, thanks for her service too.
Thanks, Nathan. That's Nathan, the EA president, by the way. I introduced himself at the beginning, but just want to make sure the board knew who Nathan was. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? There is one online comment. Janet Dietzkame.
Good morning, Janet.
Good morning, and good morning to all of you. And I am saddened by your loss. I can see it has had a profound effect. And I'll mention that my son, who is a Marine, was born on November 10th. I want to discuss climate change. Wow. We are seeing, those of us who watch news that tells us about nationwide and worldwide effects on all levels. We are watching extreme weather. I am regarding 2024 as a year of climate change extremes. China, the Philippines, Africa, Russia, all the Americas, worldwide, we are seeing extraordinary extreme weather, flooding. Now we're having fires. This is going to be a very challenging year relative to climate change. Now, I've been reading about the effects of climate change dating back to the 1960s and 1970s. I have been following this for all those years. And now we are seeing destruction, we are seeing death having to do with climate change. This is a very, very, very serious situation that needs very, very, very serious attention. Insurance companies are raising rates, starting to not cover certain elements. And people we're having people leaving areas to try to find a safer area. All these were predicted 50, 60 years ago. I am talking about climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet.
No further comments online.
All right, seeing no further comments, we'll move on to item 6, which is a report on the District Citizens Advisory Committee activities. Manuel.
Good morning, Manuel Cunha, a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee. Before you in your binders or on your tablets, you have the report, excuse me, and I will highlight just a few major things. The APCO Samir went through the wildfire smoke year, what's happening and what's going to happen. So I did a great job on that, as well as updating the citizens. The second item I think was important for you to know. The CAC took up the 2.5 plan that you're going to hear today and took a vote to support the recommendation from the staff. And again, that comes from the ag and business, cities, and environmental groups. Everybody, those that did support and move forward with giving you that recommendation. Also before you was that the hearing board members for the southern region, we approved the nominations which went forward with Morgan, and Morgan, of course, having that presentation or to you today. 617 issues. And also I want to thank Samir and his team and the staff for working and communicating, the chairman of the CAC board, to communicate with ARB and making sure that we have a representative of the most highest level to deal with the clean fleet bus rule issues. And so we made that recommendation to have that as a standing discussion, but I appreciate Samir's continual efforts of communicating with our chair and with ARB, when I say the chair of the CAC, of trying to make sure that they are at this meeting and they can answer our questions and have maybe recommendations. So it was a good meeting. I know you've got a long meeting, but everything is before you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to see what I can do to answer those, but the report is before you. And again, thanks to the staff and appreciate it.
Any questions, Manuel, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to item 7, which is adoption of the district's 2024-2025 recommended budget. And if we remember back in May, we had our public hearing, May 16th, and today is set for adoption. Samir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning again, board members. This item is to approve and authorize the chair to sign the attached resolution establishing the 24-25 district budget. Before I say a couple of things about it, I wanted to introduce our new director of finance and administrative services, who's here in the audience, Mario Orozco, and just wanted to welcome him here to his first board meeting. And may not actually say a lot about the budget today. I'm presenting it myself here, but just wanted to make sure him and his team were recognized for the hard work that's gone into preparing the budget here. This budget, just to remind you again, in terms of process, it was prepared with guidance and oversight by the board ad hoc subcommittee, which did meet back in March 27th of this year. Last month at the board meeting on May 16th, your board held a public hearing for the exclusive purpose of receiving public comments on the recommended budget. And that did occur at the last board meeting. And at that meeting, the board set today, June 20th, for considering adoption of the recommended budget. And just overall, in a nutshell, it's crafted to provide the resources that we need to fulfill district's mission. Very detailed presentation was provided, and we went over all the accomplishments and achievements with last year's funding, as well as what we hope to achieve with the funding that's in the budget. So today's approval of the attached resolution will establish the 24-25 budget at $649,349,253. So most of which, $575 million, a little bit over, is appropriated for pass-through non-operating expenditures through our incentive programs, and operations are budgeted at $73 million, just over $73 million. So with that brief presentation, we are prepared to actually go over the budget if the board were to desire to go through the details of it. We're ready for that. In the past, that's generally not been done, so it is ready for action today. And I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair and board members, for any questions or comments.
Yeah, thank you very much. And just a reminder for the public, sometimes people might think that we're not engaged, but this has been through a budget subcommittee first. Then we received it at the public hearing, and now it's here for adoption. So if there's not a lot of questions, you know that it's not because we're not engaged. It's because we've spent hours, and some people have spent many hours going over this budget. Are there any questions from the board? Any questions in Bakersfield? Looking, nope. Any questions from Modesto? All right. All right. How about public comment?
Okay. Are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment on this item?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. And double checking with Modesto, do you have any public comment on this item?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Anybody in the Fresno office that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none and no online comments.
Great. And Mario, welcome aboard. And I'm going to give you all the credit in the world for doing such a great job on this budget. So good way to start. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
A motion, we have a second. Mayor Preciado?
Okay, I'll call roll. Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
and Mr. Rickman has joined the meeting. Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs,
Yes.
Ms. Shecklian,
Aye.
Ms. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa,
Yes.
through the chair, motion passes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. On to item 8, accept $4.7 million in state vehicle replacement funding and approve the continued implementation of the district's Drive Clean and the San Joaquin Vehicle Repair and Replacement Program. Good
Right.
morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Brian Dodds, and it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning to discuss our vehicle repair and replacement programs. As your board is well aware, reducing mobile source emissions is a key strategy to meet our federal air quality standards, and the district has no regulatory authority over these sources. So the district's voluntary incentive programs play a key role in reducing mobile sources of emissions in order to reach our air quality attainment goals. The Valley's low income and priority population residents are most impacted by older vehicles with higher emissions and fuel costs. The district's Drive Clean and the San Joaquin program provides Valley residents with options for reducing emissions from passenger vehicles with a focus on low income and disadvantaged communities throughout the Valley. The district's vehicle repair program provides Valley residents with options for reducing emissions from their vehicles with funding for smog-related repairs. The program is implemented in partnership with our partner Valley Clean Air Now. And traditionally, the program has been implemented through weekend events held throughout the Valley, where vehicles are screened to determine the likelihood of failing a smog test. Owners of high-emitting vehicles are provided vouchers up to $850 in vehicle emission repairs. These vouchers can be redeemed at participating STAR-certified smog shops and cover the cost of smog tests, diagnostic time, and emission-related repairs. In addition, vehicles with lapsed registration are able to complete the registration process once repairs are completed and the vehicle passes the smog test. In addition to the weekend events, a direct participation process was developed and approved by your board that allows participants the opportunity to contact Valley CAN directly in order to be issued a voucher and schedule a visit to a smog shop. This program model allows the district to continue providing incentive funding to residents most in need at the time that is most convenient to them. Over the last year, the district has provided funding for over 18,000 vehicle repairs through the program. And the weekend events continue to provide the opportunity to engage residents on vehicle replacement program, as well as other available incentive programs, including our lawnmower and fireplace replacement programs. Our vehicle repair program has been recognized through the years for our ability to effectively connect with residents in need while also ensuring emission reductions. The UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation released a report applauding the district's program implementation, including the environmental and economic benefits of the program. In addition, a May 2021 report commends the district's efforts in reaching disadvantaged communities in our implementation of the vehicle replacement program. California's 4th Climate Change Assessment Report also recognizes the vehicle repair program and states that vehicle emissions in the San Joaquin Valley are decreasing and that the program is a model of balancing efficiency and equity. And here are just a few pictures from events. If you haven't made it to one, they're a great opportunity to engage residents, and we always see very strong participation at these events. The district's 24-25 budget includes $12 million in funding for the implementation of the vehicle repair program. This includes the cost of vehicle repairs as well as event-related expenses and program administration. We are proposing to hold 16 events throughout the valley in the next fiscal year, as well as continuing the implementation of the direct participation process. We expect that the program funding can result in approximately 19,000 vehicle repairs over the next year. In 2014, the district's groundbreaking vehicle replacement component was approved by your board. This program was implemented in conjunction with our weekend repair events, and the pilot program served as a model for what has become the state's Clean Cars for All program. Since 2015, the district has received over $87 million in state funding to operate this vehicle replacement program. Incentives are available up to $12,000 to Valley residents, and they depend on the income level of the participant, whether or not they live in a disadvantaged community, and the type of replacement vehicle that is being purchased. To date, we've replaced over 6,000 high polluting vehicles with cleaner and more fuel efficient models, with new vehicles primarily being electric, plug-in hybrids and hybrids. And over the last fiscal year, this chart just breaks down the type of vehicles that are being purchased, plug-in hybrids, and battery electric vehicles totaling just over 1,400 over the last fiscal year. The district has recently received new grant awards from CARB for an additional $4.7 million in program funds, which includes funding for vehicle purchases as well as program administration costs. The project funds associated with these grants will support the replacement of approximately 320 vehicles, but that'll depend on the mix of vehicles that are purchased. As program partner, Valley Can will be responsible for program administration and management, oversight, outreach, applicant assistance, coordinating vehicle purchases, and reporting program info back to the district. The vehicle replacement program continues to see very high demand for program funds. Even with the additional funding associated with today's item, the current application demand exceeds available funding by about $5 million. Currently, there's about $20 million in pending applications in various stages of review, and we expect that by the end of the year, all program funds will be fully expended. In addition, based on the current program demand, we anticipate the need to close applications towards the end of the month. The district is currently following the state budget and CARB funding plan processes and advocating for additional funding opportunities for this important program. We will return to your board with additional funding allocations once received from CARB. Outreach for the vehicle repair and replacement programs utilizes a grassroots approach, community-driven approach to reaching low-income and disadvantaged communities throughout the valley. Our weeknight community-based events are held at local businesses or public spaces and are a great opportunity to engage community members about the program and provide assistance in submitting program applications. These weeknight community events are held throughout the valley. Since relaunching the program in October, there's been well over 100 weeknight events, which have connected with residents in small and large communities throughout the valley. And these events have proven to be extremely effective in engaging with residents who otherwise may have not been able to participate in these types of programs. In addition, we have utilized partnerships with community-based organizations to communicate program information through existing networks and social media to conduct localized outreach to connect with residents. This approach to program outreach has resulted in very high level of participation throughout the district's disadvantaged communities, with more than 98% of the valley's disadvantaged communities having participated in the vehicle replacement program. The results of the outreach strategy have proven to be very effective in reaching underserved communities and assisting in the transition to cleaner transportation options. A Luskin Center report highlights the district's ability to reach residents in underserved communities and stated that the effort of the district appears largely focused on reaching low-income communities and communities of color through a variety of outreach approaches while still attaining emission reductions. And with that, the recommendations are here before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I was perusing the Luskin report, which is on the front page of valleyair.org under the need to know, if you ever want to get a read, but it talks about the social justice component of it, which is really good.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to also let you know that Tom Knox, who's the executive director of Valley Clean Air now, is here in the audience. If you have any questions, he's also happy to engage. To keep it here on the shorter end, we'll just turn it back to the board for discussion action, but he is here. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Member Robinson.
Thank you for your efforts. What a program. Is there contact information for Valley Can, just so folks have access to that?
Yes, we have that information that's posted directly on our website, and I can, through Katrina, pass that information along.
Now, if the income stream runs out right now, is there a waiting list? So maybe for future income streams?
There would be a little bit of a waiting list. What we'd like to avoid is having significant waiting lists and having people in a position where there's not a certainty of funding. We think that there'll be additional funding that comes later this year. So we're trying to balance those efforts and being able to serve the community as much as we possibly can.
And lastly, I see on the weekend event schedule that Kings County, it seems like it's to be determined. I was just wondering if you had reached out to our fairgrounds or you need some assistance with that, or.
Yes, we've had it in various locations through Kings County, but maybe Tom has an update on where we might be with Kings County.
I can't, oops. I can't comment specifically. I do know we're in contact with the fairgrounds and we try and move around in each county, so we're as diverse as possible in our locations. So we're in the process of nailing down a location. Very good. Thank you.
If we can be helpful with that, let us know.
Thank you very much.
Member Mendez.
Yeah, I want to just make a comment. This is probably one of our greatest programs, and you've done a tremendous job. I mean, I think every board member needs to go to at least one of these. It's like a well-oiled machine. I mean, you guys have basically worked out all the kinks over the years, and and you do a great job. Thank you. I want to thank you. And also, I just want to, on your list of, you actually had one misprint. There's going to be one item, a deal on 6/21, 2205.
Wait ahead.
Just trying to get this ahead.
Thank you very much.
Oh, chicken Warner.
I just wanted to mention that, I've mentioned this in the past, that this is been studied and is proven, it's demonstrated to be one of the best program in the state. And I really thank your staff for your hard work, and in particular, how easy you make it for people to reach you. And the fact that I know people have reached out to me that are monolingual and Spanish speaking, and I'm able to give them one number, and I know for sure they are going to get in touch, because I know that's how good you guys are and how responsive you are. And so just, worth every single bit. So thanks.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Tom, I also want to echo Board Mendez's comments about your organization and the comments that have been made ahead of me. I've attended 4 of these events since I've been on the board in Los Banos and in Merced. And it's amazing how efficient your staff is to move things forward and get people through, get the vouchers. And they're very pleasant to work with as well. The one thing I noticed at our Los Banos event earlier this year is that you had cars out there for people to sample drive, to see what it's like to have an electric vehicle. And so it's just a well-oiled machine. And I really appreciate you, and I appreciate Samir and his staff for supporting your organization to run this for our community in our valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members.
Oh, and just to say, I'm going to be sharing this at our next council meeting in detail about what's available and to encourage people to participate more to help our community be able to either get vehicles or get vouchers to help fix their vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Shecklian?
Yeah, I just want to commend you. I always am seeing something pop up on social media about where different events are. And actually, this Saturday, there's an event in Lemoore, at Lemoore College. So, thank you.
Member Preciado?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also would like to congratulate everybody involved, especially Valley Camp, for taking this project moving forward, and just to reaffirm that they've been in Avenel many, many times since the program began. And because of that, now we have hydrogen gas cars, hybrids, and also fully electric cars thanks to this program. So our community really appreciates the effort that the Air District and Valley Camp jointly have come up with this project for community members. Thank you.
Dr. Sheriff?
Tom, I apologize for my colleagues piling on here. I'll resist the temptation. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no more board member comments, we'll go to the public.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to talk on this item?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
Public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to make a comment on this item? Seeing none, we do have one online comment. Janet Dietzkame.
Welcome back, Janet.
Thank you. An A+++ program. Every year I am so impressed with this program. I have a question. How is the information aside from your webpage disseminated to the public regarding the repairs and the smog and the vouchers and all those parts of the program? And how many languages is that made available for the public to be able to become aware of this outstanding program? Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. We're going to have Tom.
Shall I? Thank you. We've got a really wide variety of ways for customers to find out more about how they access these services. We've got a phone bank open 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're going to get a live answer by one of our team, essentially around the clock. That solves most of the needs of everyone who needs to find out more about the program. We're on social media. We do Facebook Lives every other week, which is attended by 300 or 400 people. Those are done in English and Spanish. We now have a Hmong language team who is available all the time, and we've been holding Southeast Asian events throughout the Valley. We've got a Sikh outreach program. We're doing everything we can to make sure that we meet or exceed the level of customer participation for every ethnic group in the Valley. The Valley Air District team helps us track those numbers very carefully. So in short, we're trying to be as inclusive and available as possible, and we're always open to new suggestions for how to improve.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. No further online comments.
All right. So I think.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, just if you would, maybe Tom had a closing comment. I think you might want to share a little bit of thoughts.
And so I just wanted to thank you all. This is my favorite 15 minutes of the year. I say this every year, but it's really true that this year, this was by far the best year ever. Thanks to the leadership of Samir, and then the dedication and coordination between dozens of district management and staff. This last 12 months, everyone really focused on how can we improve every aspect of every system. And the district really went over and above in working with us down to minute detail. How do we streamline everything? How do we make it faster, more accurate, more responsive? And which resulted in, probably the single biggest result in climate equity seen in California ever. We increased the rate of Clean Cars for All by 4 times. We're normally seeing about $10 million of activity per year, about 1,000 vehicle replacements. We're on track to spend $40 million in 12 months. That's about as good as it possibly can go. And it would not be possible without the coordination by the district nonstop for the past 12 months and the amount of work that they've done in pushing hundreds of checks out a month, going way beyond what we thought was possible. So this has been an incredible run, and which is thanks to the board for having built a management and culture here at the district that enables some really amazing things to happen. So we're really appreciative, and we'd love to do this another year with your blessing, and can't wait to see you again next June. So thank you.
That's great. And to your team, again, the efficiency, you heard that. Anyone that hasn't been to an event is missing something, but the efficiency of getting people in and out is truly amazing. You guys have made an art of it, and to our staff, so much appreciate. Brian, thank you very much. With that, I'm going to bring it back to the board. I'm trying to keep us on a timeline today because the meeting could go a little long. We have a motion?
Second.
We have so many seconds, but we're going to give it to Liz. Yeah. All right.
Call for roll. Mr. Couch.
Or yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Mendez.
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner.
Yes.
Mr. Pereira.
Aye.
Mr. Preciado.
Yes.
Mr. Reyna.
Yes.
Mr. Rickman.
Yes.
Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs.
Hard.
Ms. Shucklian.
Aye.
Ms. Nguyen.
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Perfect. That was part one of the great news, and we're moving on to item 9, part 2, accept and appropriate $9 million in additional revenue from the US EPA to fund the replacement of agricultural tractors and heavy-duty diesel trucks. Todd.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Todd DeYoung, your Director of Grants and Incentives. I am here this morning to bring some good news, as you mentioned. And just by way of a bit of background, as you've heard and as you're well aware, significant resources and funding are needed to implement a successful incentive-based strategy, which is a complement to our very robust regulatory program that we operate here at the district. These incentive programs are designed with the needs of the Valley residents and stakeholders in mind. As we're developing these programs, we're very collaborative in how we develop them and how we implement these programs. We work very, very closely with Valley partners on all of our different programs to successfully advocate and compete for new clean air funding as it becomes available to us, whether at the federal level, the state level, and the local level. We've gained a reputation for administering very successful and efficient and effective programs. We're consistently praised through program reviews, audits, and in statewide areas and federal areas for our efficiency and our fiscal accountability. And what this does is this allows us, with this reputation, it allows us to bring increased funding to the Valley. With that reputation, they understand that we do a good job in administering, we're efficient, we're effective, we're good stewards of public funds, and so this allows us to effectively compete for additional funding opportunities as they arise. The most recent example of that is with the Diesel Emission Reduction Act, or DERA funding. It's a federal funding source that becomes available generally on an annual basis. So most recently, back in November of 2023, we submitted 2 proposals to EPA in response to the DERA program solicitation. Those 2 proposals were to replace agricultural tractors, uncontrolled Tier 1 and Tier 2 engines with new agricultural tractors that have Tier 4 engines. Those Tier 4 engines can be up to 98% cleaner than the engines that they are replacing in some cases. And then the second proposal was to replace heavy-duty diesel trucks with 2018 or older model year engines with new advanced technology, zero emission, battery electric, or hydrogen fuel cell trucks. In March of this year, just recently, we were informed that both proposals were selected for full funding in the amount of $4.5 million each. That was the maximum that was available under the program per application. We were allowed to submit 2 applications. We submitted 2 and we were approved for 2. So the total award from EPA under this round of DERA funding is that $9 million. So just a little bit of information on the ag tractors. What we propose is to feed this funding into our existing tractor replacement program. Using the existing guidelines for that program. These are state guidelines and they've been developed in consultation with the district. And again, they're replacing those uncontrolled, those tier 0 engines, tier 1 and tier 2 tractors with those new latest and greatest tier 4 tractors. The DERA funding is 4.5 million. The district would provide about $5.9 million in match. And then the participants would add another 6.7 million in total match funding. So as you can see there, the total project cost is over $17 million. We estimate based on current figures that this is enough funding to replace about 100 tractors, just over 100 tractors. And as you can see there, those last bullets are the expected emission reductions that we would potentially see from these replacements of these agricultural tractors. Similarly, with heavy duty trucks, we're utilizing our existing guidelines, existing state approved guidelines for truck replacement programs. And we're focusing on those 2018 and older model year engines. Again, the DERA funding is about $4.5 million. It covers about 25% of the cost of these new trucks. And then the participant would kick in the remainder of that funding. And so there's a total project cost of about $9.6 million. And again, we're forecasting about 18 trucks with this additional funding. These trucks are fairly expensive, as you have undoubtedly heard with these advanced technology vehicles. And the expected emission reductions are there in that last bullet for you as well. So with that, the recommendations are before you are to accept the funding in the amount of $9 million. And then approve the attached budget resolution to amend the recently adopted 24-25 budget. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Todd. Dr. Sheriff.
Very, very impressive work. Thank you. You know, I think about the NBA finals and I think about what you all are doing and I think, no, go Air District. Extraordinary. So there's funding specifically on the truck side. Well, this is a zero emission program. On the ag tractor side, you know, who can complain about replacing an uncontrolled tractor with a tier 4 tractor? I mean, that's fabulous. There is no mention of zero tractors, and there are some applications where people, it fits their duty cycle, and it's a great option. How is that covered, or is it part of the?
It's a great point. And I think we were remiss in not mentioning that. They are eligible under the program. Okay. We have seen very limited opportunities for those so far, but I think as we're moving forward, we are seeing an increased interest in those tractors. So they would absolutely be eligible under the program.
Technology just keeps getting better.
It does. Thank you.
Member Robinson.
Thank you, Todd. Yeah, another big achievement. The question is, how is the torque on the new technology, both the tier 4 tractors and the trucks?
I think what we've heard on the truck side, electric motors have an incredible amount of torque. And so I don't think that's necessarily the issue there. It's, you run into, charging and duty cycle with the trucks. On the tractor side, we've heard no complaints about torque with the new tier 4 engines. As we transition from tier 3 to tier 4, there were some learning curves that were involved in new technology, but it's a widely popular program. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in applications from farmers ready to make those transitions to tier 4. And so obviously it's working for the agricultural industry.
I know, like with refuge removal, the batteries are really heavy, and so it kind of limits the battery life. How does that play out?
Yeah, with heavy duty trucks, that is an issue. The weight of the batteries versus the total weight of the truck and the ability to carry a full 80,000 pound load. They have mitigated that in a lot of the trucks. What you're seeing is in some of the hydrogen options, there is a weight penalty associated with the increased weight of the tanks and the hydrogen. And so they're working through those issues. Those are still What we're seeing more in the class 6, those smaller box trucks, a much bigger uptake because that weight penalty isn't as big of an issue. And the duty cycle is such that it lends themselves to those short return to base duty cycles much better. So class 6 and 7, we're seeing a great uptake in the heavy duty trucks. The class 8, we're absolutely seeing movement. And again, technology is getting better. The trucks are getting lighter and they're being more efficient with their batteries. So we expect that to continue into the future.
Yeah. Thank you. Member McCauley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick question. Do we have a wait list on these programs currently?
We do.
What do they look
In
like?
particular with the tractor program, we do have a couple $100 million in applications waiting for funding. And trucks, not as much so, but depending on the class of truck, we do have a small waiting list on those.
Okay, but enough of a waiting list on the truck program to essentially fill it.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Nguyen.
I'm Supervisor McCauley. Asked my question. So I thought there might be a wait list on those tractors. I have some friends who participate in this program and they really appreciate it. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Doug, please go. You're up, Dr. Sheriff. It didn't matter. I called on you.
Now I'm gonna go just because. With that extensive wait list, do we need to re-examine a little bit what our piece of the contribution is? Because it does reflect, I think, that the technology really year by year improves and people get experience and understand the duty cycles that fit and how they have to think differently about it and are clearly making it work, which is great.
Yeah, no, a couple of quick points. So with the earlier approval of the budget, there was a large funding allocation included in that spending plan. So this funding, just a clarification, is also in addition to, I think it was somewhere in the $150 million or so appropriation of the budget just recently, voting on the budget. So there is, we're going to be working our way through the applications. The other point, in direct response to your question, Dr. Sheriff, is that we do on a constant basis kind of look at that component of the program. And so one of the things the board recently did, for example, was come up with a structure that provided more funding for smaller and small farms. And you may recall that it's traditionally the program, even though it's been eligible for say 85% funding, traditionally we actually pushed that down to about 50% or so funding, cost share with ag. And then what we were seeing was a need to continue looking for ways to get smaller farms to participate. So we went and looked at, I think it's about a 70 and an 80% structure. Correct. For those two, the small and smaller farm kind of categories, 500 acre, 100 acre totals. So, and that actually resulted in a significant uptake in the program by smaller farmers, right? So you had, a lot of traditional kind of interest, and you had a lot of increased interest actually from smaller farms. So it's actually been, I don't want to say it's healthy to have a much bigger wait list than you have, say, available funding, but we are spending every year. We're spending record levels. Every year we break through the prior year record in terms of responding and also having more interest from small farmers. So it's something that we keep looking at, and I think if we find some opportunities for further refinement, we'll certainly come back to the board and have more conversations about that.
Perfect. And I think it comes down to, as Dr. Sheriff was talking about, it's easy to go from a tier 0 to a tier 4 tractor. There's so much savings there. And the cost structure is such that we're figuring ways to make it incentivize enough to get people involved. On the truck side, it's limited. And I think you spoke to that, Todd, about what can actually be utilized because of the 80,000 pound limit. Trailers are made when you're hauling from the field, they're made to carry 80,000 pounds or as close to 80,000 pounds as possible. Full almonds, walnuts, that's how they size them. So, and the cost versus the miles that they're actually utilized doesn't work out. I know Manuel's talked about that many times about these low use silage trucks and other things that might be involved. It doesn't quite fit that capacity, but it's easy to spend the money because the need is still there, depending on the class of the trucks. So, and it's good for the air quality. I want to point out the way we get rid of these issues of having to choose is by getting more grants. And I just want to shout out to the folks because we have an impacted air base and so we compete well, but it has to do with the efficiency of the team. And Tom and Samir, you spend time in DC and Sacramento all the time asking for money, telling our story. And I think it's a winning story and we've been successful because of that. So a little shout out to the team. Okay, with that, we're going out to public comment.
Okay, are there any members of the public in Bakersfield on this item?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comment in Modesto?
Yes.
Thank you.
Erin Pitt with the Manufacturers Council. We appreciate the funding for the trucks, although when we're running in the tens of thousands of the heavy duty trucks to be able to replace 18 to 20 seems like a drop in the bucket and not really moving the needle significantly. And so my question is there a way to leverage these dollars to impact a greater number of trucks or look at other kinds of technology, maybe the 100% clean burn or something that have lower unit price tags to help us both clean up the air, but also assist more firms, trucking firms and companies that have run the large, heavy Class 8 trucks.
Thank you for your comments, Maren.
Any other comments in Modesto?
No further comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? I do have one coming up to the podium.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Chris McLaughlin, California Cotton Ginners and Growers Association. We'd like to ask for your support on this issue. Obviously, funding for trucks and tractors for our industry is pivotal and crucial, especially with all of the changing regulations specific to electrification. I think having all of these programs oversubscribed is, again, to echo your comments, Mr. Chair, is a testament to the Grants and Incentives Department at the Air District to be able to provide and get this money, as well as have a lot of people waiting to, when it's finally available, to take advantage of it. We certainly wish there were a couple extra zeros tacked on to this grant and allocation, but at this point, we'll take what we can get. And so we'd ask for your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Chris.
More in-person comments?
Good morning, Manuel Cunha, Nisei Farmers League. First, we support the process of getting funding and grants and incentives. My question to Todd and to Samir and the board is the agricultural burn farmer, if he would be eligible for these monies, but that answer is already done because you're following Carl Moyer. Under the ag burn, push, pile, and burn, those farmers never had push, pile, burn farmer type guys, never had tippers or grinders. They've done that for 30, 40 years. Now their clients, their farmers are saying, hey, you need to get a grinder because we want you to do all the work. That farmer that pushes and piles it now has to go find somebody that has a grinder, delays the process. But I believe that if we can't follow the Carl Moyer to get funds for this, for these type of farmers, about 3 or 4 of them, they've been at it for 30, 40 years, 50 years. We need to help them get a grinder because they have growers. That grower doesn't want to have, and that farmer doesn't want to, grinder guy doesn't want to go find somebody to grind because it may be 4 or 5 months. So maybe if we could sit down with the staff and figure out maybe, I hate to use this word, when we get in trouble, we pay a penalty. And you have that in that account, then maybe we can use some of those funds to help these farmer grinder chipper guys that never had the grinder, but they pushed and piled and land leveled and ripped and all that. So I look forward to that. The last part real quick, the trucks, we have to deal with 323,000 Tier 3 trucks in California. That's the number that was not registered by DMV in 24. That's a massive number, from 14,000 pounds to 80,000 pounds. If we can figure out how we can fund these used Tier 4 trucks to help these individuals, these independents, we're going to see a lot of activity, which happens in August, July, and May, or August, September with the wine industry. There aren't going to be enough trucks at all, the tier fours at all, to move this stuff. So what happens? We can't move our product. We can't get it to the packer, the processor, can't get it to the port. So I hope maybe we could sit down and figure out if CARB, and CARB is the key to this because they hold the rules. Why can't we fund a tier used for truck? And we shouldn't have to make the farmers or the individuals go through hell to get a used truck. That's their life. So I know my seconds are gone. So, but again, we support what you guys have done, the board, everybody. Congratulations. Our farmers want to get into tier 4 tractors, not electrics, because they're too dang heavy. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Manuel.
I don't see any further comments in person and there are no online comments.
All right, back to the board. Action.
Motion approved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Give it to Rusty.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been taking over. All right.
Okay, I'll call for roll. Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian,
Aye.
Ms. Wynn,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa.
Yes.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Todd. On to item 10, adopt the 2024 plan for the 2012 annual PM 2.5 standard. And I don't ever want to feel like anyone's rushed, but today I'm trying to make sure we get this meeting done so we don't have to take a break for lunch and then return afterwards. So.
All right. Good morning, Chair, members of the board. I'm John Klassen, Director of Air Quality Science and Planning. I'm joined by Emily Nealand, Program Manager, and we will kick off this presentation and walk you through it. So as we know, we have a number of challenges that we face in improving air quality in the San Joaquin Valley. We are in a bowl. We have mountain ranges to the east, to the west, to the south of us. Our topography can work against us. We often have meteorology that can place a lid over the bowl of the valley. In addition to those challenges, we have major goods movement corridors, high population growth, pollution transport, wildfires, drought conditions at times. This can all work against us and make it very difficult. But despite that, we've continued to improve air quality. And in fact, to meet the same air quality standards, we have to reduce our emissions even further than other regions to meet those same standards. So we have to go even further than other areas have ever had to go before to meet those health standards set by EPA. Just as a reminder, what is PM 2.5? This is particulate matter that is very small, 2.5 microns in diameter or smaller. And on the right-hand side of this slide, we show an indication of how small this can be. So that's a human hair shown there. Across the diameter of that human hair are PM10 particles, so 10 microns in diameter. If you look really closely inside each of those are 4 PM 2.5 particles spanning the diameter of that. So PM 2.5, smaller than a human hair, smaller than a grain of sand. Because it's so small, it can get deep into the lungs as you breathe it and cause health issues. This can be either a solid particle or liquid droplets in the air. This is emitted both directly or formed indirectly through chemical reactions in the atmosphere through different gases. So it's very complex how it's formed. And the number of health effects can happen as you are exposed to high concentrations of PM 2.5. You can get deeper into the lungs, as this picture indicates. It can cause premature death, aggravate asthma for people who have asthma, respiratory issues, bronchitis, lung cancer, even neurological effects. Recent research is showing that it can have effects on the brain function as well. So to address this in the Valley, to continue to reduce PM 2.5, your board has adopted a number of attainment plans over the decades to reduce emissions. And looking at the chart here that's on the right-hand side and in our boardrooms, you can see a huge reduction in NOx emissions throughout the Valley over this over 40-year time period. This represents about a 75% reduction overall. And looking at just the stationary source emissions reductions, about a 93% reduction has happened over this period. And NOx reductions are key for us because that is a precursor to both the formation of both ozone and PM 2.5. So getting NOx reductions is really important, and it's been a cornerstone of our strategy for a number of years. In addition to the efforts that we make, CARB also makes a lot of effort to reduce emissions from mobile sources. So these reductions are a joint effort between what we do here locally and what CARB does on the state level.
Combined, it's the toughest regulatory program in the nation. And on top of that, we have a very strong incentive program, which we talk about a lot with your board. You've already heard a few items this morning, where over the years, about $6.2 billion have been invested in our incentive programs between both public and private investment. And through all of this, we've continued to make major improvements in air quality throughout the region. But despite the significant improvements we made, we still need to go further to meet all the health standards in front of us. And just to show that through these efforts, what is it doing for improving air quality? We wanted to show this, and this is really striking how much has changed over time. This is showing the number of days during the calendar year when we are exceeding the 24-hour PM 2.5 standard. So going to the left-hand side of this slide, you can see that about 19% of the days, that's that red portion of the donut, 19% of the days during that calendar year, we were exceeding the PM 2.5 standard. Going forward in time, we can see that red portion continuing to decrease. And last year in 2023, which was a great year for us, we only exceeded that standard 2% of the days during the calendar year, where 98% of those days we were meeting the health standard. So we're really happy to see this great progress, but we still need to go further, continue to reduce emissions to meet all the standards. Looking specifically at where we're seeing progress, where we still need to see more improvement, this is showing across all the air monitoring sites, which are shown on the bottom part of the chart here. You can see the names of the locations, different cities throughout the valley. On the top hand portion of the chart, we're showing the average of PM 2.5 for the calendar year 2023, those blue bars. There are a number of dashed lines on this chart as well, and those are indicating the various annual PM 2.5 standards that EPA has established. So the top dashed line there, that's the 15 microgram standard. You can see in 2023 where we were well below that across all the sites in the valley. That middle dashed line, that's the 2012 standard, the 12 microgram standard. That's the focus of this attainment plan before you today. You can see that the majority of the valley last year was below that standard already. And there's a few sites left where we still need to see some more air quality improvement to get us below there. And then that bottom dash line, that's the 9 microgram standard, the one that EPA established earlier this year. And you can see how much further we need to go to get to that point. So the point we wanted to make here is that most of the valley is already attaining this 12 microgram standard. We're below that line. Last year was a great year. This year in 2024 is also a great year. It's a great start. And the way it works for attainment planning is every area of the valley of the region needs to be below that standard line for the region to be officially in attainment. So while we're still working towards that to go get all areas there, the most of the valley is already there, which is really good to see. So what's within this PM 2.5 plan? Emily will share more details, but at a high level, this is a joint effort between CARB and the we work on this together. We developed the strategy together. So we collaborated very closely with CARB. And this is focused on the 12 microgram annual PM 2.5 standard. This plan meets all the Clean Air Act requirements. This builds upon decades of planning and technology development and implementation. The foundation of it is extensive science, like we talked about with the study agency this morning. A lot of that helps set the foundation of what this plan is based upon. A state-of-the-art air quality modeling is used, best available information. This plan went through an extensive public process and provides for attainment by 2030 by getting a 66% reduction in NOx emissions into the future and a 16% reduction in PM 2.5 emissions. It has both regulatory and incentive-based measures proposed by the district and CARB, and also has commitments to evaluate and implement additional emission reductions where possible. So just a reminder of the timeline of where we've come so far in the development of this plan. We've taken actions already late last year. A number of elements came to your board for consideration and approval in October of 2023, which we called the initial SIP requirements. That covered a number of elements you see on the left-hand side, the precursor demonstration, requirements for major sources. It included the emissions inventory. It's an important foundation for the plan, and the best available control measure analysis that was submitted to EPA in November of last year. Now going to the right-hand side, what we have before you today are the remaining elements that are required for this attainment plan, which includes the attainment demonstration itself, contingency measure analysis, reasonable further progress, quantitative milestones, and then most stringent measures analysis. So this is before you today to consider. CARB is planning to hear this at their public hearing in July, and then we'll be submitting it to EPA for their review. And this all points to a 2030 attainment date. So at another look at this, of what's involved in this attainment plan, is not just regulatory measures, it's a number of things between regulatory, incentive-based measures, CARB includes their mobile source strategy within this plan. There's a lot of public and education and outreach efforts, technology advancement, trying to transition technology to zero emission, and continued focus to get emissions reductions from federal sources. Between all that together, that is the attainment strategy for this plan to get us to attainment by 2030. At this point, I'll hand it over to Emily to walk us through some more of the details of the strategy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and your board. So first, I just wanted to go over, we have a number of adopted district rules that really serve as the foundation of this plan. They serve as the gold standard because they're already adopted and in place, either achieving reductions currently or they will be achieving reductions here in the coming years. You can see within this table, there's a number of rules that your board adopted as part of commitments in the 2018 PM 2.5 plan. So those rules are kicking in the coming years and achieving reductions. It's also important to note that the rules within this table are immediately achieving reductions, although we have a number of additional district rules that also serve as the foundation for this plan. So your board has adopted a number of rules that are already in place, achieving reductions into the future for this attainment strategy. Within the plan, we also have a number of new commitments, the first of which is for District Rule 4550, Conservation Management Practices, which limits PM10 emissions from on-field farming and ag operations. The rule has been extremely successful in reducing PM10, reducing these emissions by 35.3 tons per day through the reduction of passes of ag equipment and implementation of other conservation practices such as cover cropping, conservation tillage, and other practices. Within this plan, we include a commitment to conduct a rule of development process to evaluate additional opportunities within the rule, specifically to reduce emissions from fallowed land. In particular, with the drought circumstances currently, a lot of fields may be pulled out of production. And so we'll be looking at opportunities to implement CMPs on those lands in collaboration with industry stakeholders, USDA, NRCS, and other agencies. The timeline for this rule that's committed to in the plan is action in 2026 and implementation in 2028. Our next rule commitment is for Rule 4901, wood burning fireplaces and wood burning heaters. As you know, this rule implements stringent wood burning curtailments during the wood burning season, which is November through February, which reduces PM and other related emissions. As part of the 2018 PM 2.5 plan, your board adopted amendments to this rule in 2019 to further ratchet down on the curtailment levels within the rule. Your board also adopted enhancements to our incentive strategy, public outreach and education strategy, enforcement, and air quality forecasting programs. So a lot of reductions have already been achieved through these recent amendments that your board adopted. Looking forward, we are including a commitment in the plan to conduct a rule development process to further reduce emissions from this category by extending the wood burning season into March. We would be looking at action in 2025 and implementation in 2026. We've also included a commitment for an incentive-based strategy through our fireplace and wood stove change-out program. Through this successful program, we already encourage Valley residents to transition from older, higher polluting wood burning fireplaces to cleaner alternatives such as natural gas inserts. Through the program, we've replaced over 29,000 wood burning devices with cleaner devices, with over $64 million in grant funding invested to date. Looking ahead, the plan includes a commitment to quantify and request credit for the reductions achieved through the program for projects through 2026. In addition, we also have a comprehensive strategy for low dust nut harvesting. Your board has long supported research and evaluation of technologies to reduce emissions from nut harvesting. The district, with the study agency in partnership with USDA, NRCS, CARB, EPA, and ag stakeholders, has conducted studies to evaluate the emission reductions possible through lower dust equipment, with reductions greater than 40%. Additionally, the Almond Board of California has a strategy to reduce harvest dust by 50% by 2025. In 2017, your board adopted a community-level targeted strategy to reduce localized PM from sources of local concern, which included nut harvesting. In 2018, your board launched a pilot program to deploy low-dust nut harvesters. And in 2020, the full-fledged low-dust nut harvester program was announced and opened. Through the program, we've spent over $20.7 million to replace over 240 pieces of equipment with low-dust harvesters. reducing more than 11,000 tons of PM10 and 1,400 tons of PM2.5 to date. Looking ahead with this plan, we're trying to continue our progress in reducing emissions from nut harvesting through a comprehensive strategy in close collaboration with stakeholders, USDA, NRCS, CARB, and EPA through the evaluation of potential enhancements to our strategy for nut harvesting. This could be through our incentive program, CMP program, and collaborative outreach efforts. We'll also support ongoing research efforts to further understand the amount and type of harvesters operating in the valley and potential reductions achievable through newly available harvester technologies, including conditioners, which is a recent development within the harvesting industry. We'll continue our incentive-based efforts with $25 million in funding to accelerate the deployment of these clean technologies, which is estimated to replace 350 additional harvesters. We'll continue to advocate for additional state and federal funding. And this overall strategy supports our development of our upcoming strategy of a new plan addressing the 2024 PM2.5 standard that was released in February. In addition to these commitments, we have a number of additional plan commitments to evaluate opportunities through the plan's attainment year of 2030. For stationary source and NOx PM measures, we'll be looking at emerging technologies, including zero emission technologies as they become available through 2030. Commercial charbroiling, we recently formed a charbroiler collaborative work group with San Diego, South Coast, Bay Area, and CARB to evaluate controls for underfire charbroilers. Residential and commercial heating, we're continuing to evaluate zero emission requirements in collaboration with CARB, South Coast, and other agencies that are engaged in similar efforts. Energy and climate change programs, identifying opportunities to gain co-benefits from existing and future programs, energy efficiency and energy usage. For clean landscaping equipment and strategies, we'll look at our ongoing work with landscaping services and local jurisdictions to pursue options for accelerating the deployment of zero emissions equipment and promoting best practices in the valley. And lastly, other innovative out-of-the-box measures that may become available through the plan's attainment year as technologies, practices, and policies evolve. On the state level, the California Air Resources Board has a number of commitments within the plan for on-road heavy-duty equipment, on-road light-duty, off-road equipment, zero emission standards for space and water heaters, and locomotives. So you can see here on the slide the action dates and the implementation dates for CARB's respective measures. And this comprehensive strategy, including our existing control program with our adopted rules and regulations, and then the new commitments from both the district and CARB, as John mentioned, is estimated to reduce 66% of NOx by 2030 and 16% of PM2.5 in 2030. And these reductions will bring us into attainment of the 2012 annual PM2.5 standard as expeditiously as practicable by 2030. Looking at our journey to attainment, in the right-hand side of the slide, you can see the percent of the valley population that's estimated to be in attainment. It's important to note in current date, 2024, over 70% of the population is experiencing attainment now, and expeditious attainment for the remaining areas will happen in the coming years, most of them earlier than 2030, but by 2030. CARB conducted a health benefit analysis that shows the reduced annual incidences of negative health outcomes through the attainment strategy in this plan, including 111 premature mortalities, over 79,000 asthma symptoms, and over 16,000 missed work days in addition to a number of other health outcomes. Of course, we have to call for federal action. The plan includes both commitments from the district and CARB, but does not include any measures from EPA for federally regulated mobile source emissions. Looking ahead, it's important that EPA do their fair share to reduce emissions from mobile sources that fall exclusively under their jurisdiction with respect to interstate heavy-duty trucks, locomotives, and other mobile sources under their jurisdiction. We continue to advocate for state and federal action as well as pursue funding. You've heard a number of times today, we operate very successful incentive programs for mobile sources, so we'll continue to advocate for that. But of course, EPA action is critical to assist us with attainment of this standard, but also the new PM2.5 standard, and that won't be feasible without their support. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on the plan public process. We held 5 public workshops, providing multiple opportunities for comments and suggestions to receive feedback on the plan. Workshop materials were made available in both English and Spanish, and we provided Spanish interpretation at every workshop. We also provided regular updates to your board, the Citizens Advisory Committee, and Environmental Justice Advisory Group meetings. Manuel mentioned at the last CAC meeting, the CAC unanimously supported the plan, which is a group made up of members representing environmental, industry and ag, and city interests. We also provided multiple resources for the public to participate, including a PM 2.5 plan webpage that was dedicated to the plan, an email list for up-to-date information, and a dedicated email address for questions and comments. The comments provided throughout the plan were critical in shaping the proposed plan. The district's measures were all guided by public comments that we received, and the public will have additional opportunities for involvement as individual strategies and programs and regulations are developed over the coming years. So with that, there's a number of recommendations here before you. Before I open it up for your questions and comments, I'm going to pass it back to John.
All right, thank you, Emily, for the overview. So as we mentioned, this is a joint plan with the California Air Resources Board. We work on this very closely together. We developed the strategy together. So I want to introduce Michael Benjamin, who's the chief of the Air Quality Planning and Science Division with CARB. We worked really closely with his team in developing this over this last year. We really appreciate all the collaboration with him and his team. So I'll hand it over to Michael to make a few comments.
Thank you, John. Good morning, Chair Chiesa and board members. As John said, my name is Michael Benjamin, and I'm Chief of the Air Quality Planning and Science Division at the California Air Resources Board. I'm pleased I could join you today, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide a few remarks about this plan from CARB's perspective. As you're aware, CARB and the district have a long-standing close partnership to develop clean air strategies for the San Joaquin Valley. We've worked together collaboratively for many years on numerous scientific, regulatory, and planning efforts to reduce PM 2.5 air pollution. And this partnership, along with collaboration with Valley businesses and communities, has brought significant air quality improvements in the Valley. For the 2024 plan before you today, we've worked closely together with your board for over a year and a half to develop elements needed for the plan, including the modeled attainment demonstration showing attainment by 2030. As you heard in the presentation, CARB's mobile source measures provide critical reductions of NOx and PM 2.5 emissions for the attainment strategy. CARB has committed to pursuing these measures in our state SIP strategies, and many of the measures have already been adopted and are being implemented. As documented in the plan and in the CARB staff report, the control strategy implemented by CARB and the district will provide improved air quality for residents of the San Joaquin Valley, with many health benefits, including 434 avoided cases of childhood asthma and 111 avoided deaths in 2030. I'll close by echoing your board's recommendation that the governing board adopt the 2024 PM 2.5 plan. We always appreciate the partnership with the district. Our collaborative work will no doubt continue as we transition into working on the next SIP for the 9 microgram annual PM 2.5 standard. We look forward to working with you and Valley stakeholders as we continue that process to meet federal air quality requirements and improve public health in the Valley. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment today.
Thank you very much for joining us, Michael. Appreciate that.
With that, we'd be happy to take any comments or questions you may have.
That's great. John and Emily, thank you very much too. Do we have any questions before we go to public comment? Supervisor Rickman. Member Rickman.
Thank you, Chairman. Good to see you this morning. Quick question. Looking at different plans and quality controls and so on. I mean, what are we doing about one of the biggest threats that you could say, I guess, is fires? And the reason I bring this up is if you've been watching the news here in San Joaquin County, I mean, we've had multiple fires. Just in my district, we just currently had a little over a 14,000 acre fire, grass fire, in which we lost one house in South County. And just more recently, Calaveras had a fire that approached on San Joaquin County. So what are we, we have all this funding and you talk about these different quality, these different strategies. What about funding or some kind of tax credit or incentives to property owners where these, dry grasses fall on? Is there anything, have anybody thought about something like that? I mean, pay them to do, huge fire breaks on their property or whatever it may be.
Mr. Chair, yeah, this is Samir. I wanted to just answer that very good question, just given the real-time relevance right now, with early start here to fire season. Yeah, so the board has, just a recap on where the board has been on this issue, longstanding position, policy, funding, and other positions on the need for there to be an all-in comprehensive forest management strategy. So this is something the board's talked about a number of times. It's evolved as policies have also evolved. And what you've seen in recent years has been, I think, some strong recognition at the state and federal level that the way that forests are managed does have to change significantly. And it's got everything to do with the way, for example, federal funding has been structured and how emergencies kind of rob, basically planning and forest management efforts whenever fires come up. And so I think there's been a lot of change actually, both at the state and federal level, to try to be a lot more responsive. So basically the scale and the frequency of management efforts is definitely moving towards a better place, at least from our perspective. By the way, we do engage very heavily with land managers at different levels, local, state, and federal levels, to try to assist projects like the ones that you're mentioning to move forward. For example, CAL FIRE is doing quite a bit of projects right now, and we're engaging very heavily with them on that. Now, are we where we need to be? That's really the big question right now. I think there's still a lot of work to be done. There's very lofty goals, for example, 500,000 acres at the state level, 500,000 acres at the federal level per year of forest management. I think that there has been movement in that direction, but there's still quite a few barriers to continuing to manage not just the forest, but also other lands, as you've mentioned. So we are looking at this. There is definitely expansion of that effort going on even this year. We've been growing for example, our support of looking at these different issues. The legislature has actually increased funding, fortunately, recently to support some of those efforts. That's been one of our funding priorities as well. And so we want to continue to go in that direction. I think it's a great topic. This is something pretty much every year. Last year, I don't think we had a chance to really talk much about this. Actually, no, we did talk about this last year, now that I think about it. But a great topic for the upcoming study session as well, to kind of see where things are. Do we want to, for example, look at programs like the one that you just mentioned? I do know that there are efforts to support local materials management, field reduction efforts, and we're supportive of those as they grow. We're seeing different work groups, collaborations, being created there. Some of the board members have pulled me into those as those have been developed. So we're definitely very interested in supporting, exactly what you just said. The board does have a position on that, and we're happy to report on that in the coming months here as we see where, we bring the different agencies together and again, can we go after maybe some funding for that and support it? By the way, there's billions of funding available. Just broadly speaking, some of that is supposed to actually be going exactly into the types of projects that you just mentioned. So a lot of it is really just helping to coordinate and make sure that folks are aware of how to access that funding and what role can we play in supporting that. And we're very open to supporting that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Samir. And I mean, this is just the beginning of fire season. And, the Altamont Pass, for example, goes up every year. And also, I mean, I don't expect a reply or anything, but, I know we discussed about, folks doing fire breaks around the residents and so on, about the dusting that, they kick up, that they can get in trouble because of some different types of rules. So if we do have rules out there that prevent folks from doing exactly what we're trying to implement, or, what we're trying to prevent these fires, I think that's something that needs to be looked at. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And thank you, Chair, for your time.
Okay. All right, Dr. Pacheco Warner.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to start off by just thanking you for taking such a collaborative approach. I don't think everyone in this room might quite have the sense of all of the Zoom meetings that you have conducted, and in-person phone calls, and just all of the things that have gone on to get to where we are today. So I just really want to acknowledge you for continuing to push forward this process, and for opening it up, the several community engagement opportunities. Really appreciated that, and really appreciate the community for being involved in the process as well. I know that this is, one step in this process that we're getting to today, and I think that I also want to frame it as like an ongoing dialogue, because the plan work, as you all are so painfully aware, is never done, right? And so this is a point in time, and we continue. The work continues. So I just wanted to mark those things. I do have a couple of things that I would hope you can walk me through, and probably things that we'll be hearing about in the public comment, so just for added clarity for the board before we hear them. So we heard from stakeholders around the thing around the 5-year delay, and we know that there's been a lot of things that led up to that 2030 attainment date. So I think it'd be helpful for the board to know a little bit more about why this date is intentional, and as you mentioned, attainment for things will come along the way as well. So if you could say a little bit about that, and then also I think there's questions and ongoing debate around the most stringent measures, and a lot of people are pointing towards the most recently adopted plans by South Coast Air Quality Management District. And so if you can say a little bit around where you believe our measures stand in reference to those. As well, and I do want to say that there is a lot of transparency. There were several community engagement workshops where you all were definitely talking about the process of this, and I wonder if you can speak to some of the ongoing availability or just openness around how you got to where you land today, and the transparency around why this suite of measures is the right one today, and I know that you have done a lot of work, and your workshops explained a lot of that, but I think it'd be helpful for the board to listen to that too before going to public comment. Thank you.
I'll start with a brief response, and if John and Emily, if you have anything to add, feel free to fill in the gaps, because you raised some really good questions. So on the 2030 timeframe, and I think CARB is still on. Want to make sure because of the joint plan, and a lot of looking at the appropriate target is given the comprehensiveness of emissions from mobile sources and the modeling that CARB conducts for the plan. As well as cooperating their monitoring site. Some of those difficult ones that we have are actually, we work with CARB very closely, for example, in the Bakersfield area, which is really that's really where we have the most difficulty. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the context of 2030. It has been very challenging to really get the most difficult locations in the valley to reduce in terms of PM 2.5. And so, as I think was pointed out on slide 20, what you have is a situation now where the majority of the population in the valley, regions of the valley, are currently in attainment, but it's really those most persistent areas. So basically within about 2 years with CARB modeling, we project over 90% of the valley will be in attainment. And it's really that last, 5% actually in those last couple of years that all these reductions we're projecting will bring that into attainment. And there's a variety of reasons for this. Plans are really just estimates and projections, right? So, in 2018, for example, when we were hoping and originally projecting to meet the plan by 2025, or to meet the standard by 2025, like I said, we've seen massive reductions. We've seen a lot of progress, but there is still some persistence. I think that's part of it. We're also increasingly challenged, as mentioned with by Supervisor Rickman, by wildfires. A lot of what we're seeing in this plan in terms of the concentrations that are being planned for include significantly increased impact from wildfires. So we're as we continue to reduce emissions, you can get impacted. And so one of the other related issues with that is that as we do more prescribed burning, for example, as a state to try to avoid bigger catastrophic wildfires, well, what happens when you have, potentially hundreds of thousands of acres being burned in a more planned fashion for prescribed burning? But does that also now lift the, what we'll call maybe background concentrations that we need to be thinking about? So there are some persistent challenges. And so, what this plan does is it takes a look at the latest background data, the latest monitor data, and again, take the latest mobile source strategy data, the latest in terms of what we were able to come up with, and tries to get at those, those last remaining kind of parts of the valley over these next couple of years. But while recognizing, again, that chart on slide 20, the progress that has actually been made to date, and is really providing those benefits. As far as the most stringent measures, and then you brought up the plan in South Coast, we work very closely with South Coast on evaluating a lot of different areas. We're often well ahead of them on some things, and then they'll take a look at that. Sometimes they have some measures that are of interest to us, and we'll look at those as well. So this plan definitely has most stringent measures in it. For example, residential wood burning comes up as a topic of conversation quite a bit. EPA, as of just a couple of years ago, recently compared our rule to other rules and everywhere across the country, and found that we have the most stringent measures for that rule. And this plan actually makes it even more stringent now with a proposal to add, to extend the winter season. It actually opens a rulemaking where if there are suggestions from the public for other things that we may want to look at in that, during that time, we're more than happy to continue engaging and actually evaluating, other things. It's a public process. It's going to be important to, that we consider everything that could possibly be done in that process. So I just want to encourage that engagement as well and appreciate it. And then to your last point, kind of on that note, everything from, we've heard a lot of concerns, for example, about the water challenges and Sigma implementation, and how that we've seen estimates of up to 1 million acres could be fallowed in the San Joaquin Valley, particularly on the west side of the valley. So we do have a measure in here. It's going to be a very difficult conversation in the next year or two as we look at how do we make sure that as lands get fallowed, we're not creating, even more particulate matter in the air, recognizing though that when you're fallowing that land, you're also not generating any income or revenue, and often may even be walking away at times potentially from some of those investments. It's going to be a very difficult conversation, but there is a commitment in the plan to look. That was one of the areas that there's a lot of interest. Residential wood burning, as I mentioned, had a lot of interest. We're committing ourselves to a public rulemaking on that, and are excited to engage on that and to see what's next in that journey as we keep ratcheting down. Where we've already seen significant reductions, but I think there's still more opportunity in that sector. Low dust harvesters and what role they play in nut harvesting emissions are very visible. We have well over 1 million acres of harvested almond, but we also know that almond and walnut prices are at record lows right now, and that there's major challenges right now within the ag sector in terms of how to respond to some of these market forces. So we're very interested in engaging to develop, basically the next phase of that strategy and to see how we can continue furthering those reductions. So a lot of these areas that are in the plan, all the aggressive stationary source controls that we've recently been putting into place, everything on what we call area sources, which are things like residential wood burning, some of the on-field activities for dust. All of these have been big ticket priority areas in the conversations that we've been having with the public and are reflected in some way, shape, or form in the plan. I think that there's always more to be done. I think there's going to be interest in engaging on other facets of looking at different categories over time. There is a commitment in the plan for that as well, to look at stationary source, for example, NOx, to look at stationary source PM 2.5. There's a commitment actually formally in the plan to actually evaluate, what is that next generation of technology, even though it's been reduced by 95%, 98%. Can you actually go electric? Can you do another, burner or whatever it might be in a combustion device where, there's still emissions to be reduced. So those were also some of the areas that had come up and where we're very interested in engaging with the public on those issues.
Dr. Sheriffs. Oh, that's right. She's off.
Thank you. Thank you for that discussion, Samir. John, Emily, thank you. Obviously really complicated. You helped it be much more understandable. And also thanks to Benjamin for participating in this, because obviously without CARB, we get nowhere. So the collaboration is essential. One thought that I always keep in mind as I think about particulate matter and trying to make sense of it. The numbers PM10 and PM 2.5 are not arbitrary numbers. There's a scientific basis. And yes, they're rounded numbers, but PM10 stops in your nose in the upper airway. So if you're blowing your nose, terrible looking rag, that's PM10. And when we talk about PM 2.5, be thinking about your heart and your brain, because that stuff is small enough that it's now getting down to the bottom of the lungs, crossing into the bloodstream, if nothing else, causing inflammation, but lots of havoc. So that's why these are important from a health standpoint. And as I worry about our work and what's happening with 10 and 2.5, I think about my nose, I think about my brain. It helps me sort this out. I really want to thank Supervisor Rickman for raising the fire issue, because a lot of these things are out of our direct control, but we're a public health agency. As a physician, I worry about every death. These things are very important. Fire is becoming much more. I saw somewhere a study that suggested we're talking magnitude 25% of the public's exposure to 2.5 is now fire related. That's a staggering number, and it's going to go up. It's going to go up despite our engagement with forest, improved management. That number is going to go up because of climate change. And it reminds me the pride's not the word I'm looking for, but yes, prevention. If we don't do anything about climate change, we're facing bigger and bigger problems. So when we are engaged in projects that improve CO2 emissions, as well as directly our air quality mission, that's something that's very important. Prevention. Two questions. And maybe they're a little small, but one, trying to understand on page 5, the on-road mobile and the other mobile contribution. Well, the off-road mobile contribution is now becoming a bigger contribution. And one, if you could break down a little bit for me what off-road mobile means. And that's in a sense thinking about, okay, what are the tough conversations in the future? And the other question is on page 19. The remaining PM 2.5 we're dealing with, how much of that is directly emitted? So we're talking wood smoke, diesel engines, and how much of that is indirectly emitted, which is the secondary, the NOx problem. So yeah, it just helps me as we move forward, thinking about our problems. Thank you.
So John and I think we'll tag team this one. I'll give it a first crack though. On other mobile, that includes, it's got the list of sources, but basically other mobile would be off-road mobile, which would be everything from construction equipment and our various sort of heavy duty diesel equipment, construction-like equipment. You've got off-road from ag equipment as well, so tractors and other agricultural equipment. You also have locomotives in that category. And those are, I think those three probably represent the biggest ticket kind of line items there. And then I think maybe you can tackle the question. Those are all what we call directly emitted PM 2.5 emissions, but they come from a variety of sources actually.
Yeah, the question on how does direct PM 2.5 compare to indirect, those that are being emitted in the atmosphere through different gases?
What the percentages are.
Yes.
How much is direct, how much is indirect?
Right. On an annual average, currently indirect is pretty close to direct. During the winter season, when we see our peak concentrations during the winter months, indirect portions like ammonium nitrate tends to be the largest portion. Direct emissions like organic carbon is not as large. But on an annual average, they're much closer in comparison. So both are really important to continue to get reductions from direct and indirect atmospheric chemical formation of PM 2.5 to meet an annual standard.
Okay, and I would point out, thank you for pointing out that it's a little different problem in the winter than it is, and the mix is different in the winter than it is in the summer. It's a different issue. Well, I hadn't thought of this question before. For those most resistant areas that we deal with as a region, is that primarily a winter or summer exceedance?
I think the answer is both. I think it really is. You will still definitely get the winter peaks that drive the annual average. But you're bringing up a really important point, which is that outside the winter, though, because the annual average is every single day, you're also seeing this need to keep ratcheting down on, and that's both NOx and direct PM from various sort of area sources. And there's contribution. It's a long list on direct PM. Everything from roadway dust, and including brake and tire wear. You got agricultural dust, and a variety of other activities that contribute, and each of which are being ratcheted down. But yeah, it really it's all in on that for areas like Bakersfield, but throughout the valley as well.
That's it. Member Robinson.
Thank you. I think this ties into the Rule 4550 for conservation management practices, and also what you were saying, Samir. So Kings County, we're the first county in the state of California to be put on probation, right? And so because of SGMA. And so the problem there becomes the fallowing of the land. And so one of the practices we were discussing is to not disturb the land, because it kind of causes a crest on the top, and therefore the dust doesn't rise. But then my question comes up because it generates weeds, and other farmers get upset because the wind blows, carries it over to them. So what are we doing in reference to that? What incentives do we have in place to somehow take care of those weeds? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could just quick response to the question. Yeah, so this is a very important topic. This question of fallowing and what's our role in basically working with various GSAs, counties, research entities, and most importantly, agriculture itself, to look at these issues and try to find some way to mitigate, what could be some dusty conditions potentially. It's got to be driven by research and science. First, I have to say, that when we look at our commitment and you look at our work in this space, it's really important that we're engaging heavily with USDA, who are the soil experts. There's researchers involved looking at this and making sure that, you know, the soils differ throughout the valley. The measures differ. Some are very costly in terms of what you might do on those lands. One of them, for example, is what you just mentioned, which is allowing for there to be a crust maybe formed on that land. So basically stop working the land to create that opportunity for there to be material that then maybe gets blown around by wind. But then there's other issues to consider when you do that. You brought up the weed issue. There's other issues like concerns that we've heard around endangered species. You know, basically, if you don't maintain the land as a working land, you know, some other concerns that may come up with that. There's other measures that could be deployed that have been done here and there that we're actually interested in looking at with USDA, with agriculture, as part of that public engagement process. There's costs involved with those, and then what role basically do fallowing programs under SGMA implementation play in dealing with some of these concerns that may come up that need to be backed by science and with well understood variables like cost? You know, who pays for, you know, some of these things that may actually be costly, for example, on that land that again isn't producing anything. So these are the big ticket questions that are going on. I don't have an answer for you directly on. We don't have a program, for example, to pay for weed mitigation, you know, on a fallow land. You know, there's revenues that we receive for different types of programs. That's not one that we actually have currently. But as we look at this process through the public engagement, as we keep looking at this particular facet of our CMP program, that I think will become a likely question. You know, where is the funding? How much is needed? And then what role do we play in that? So these are going to be some big questions that come up in that process. And I appreciate you kind of elevating, you know, that issue, because I think it is going to be one of those big priorities for us in the next couple of years to really try to figure out, you know, how do we actually support, you know, some of those transitions in a way that's cleaner for air, but also is in a feasible way with respect to valley agriculture.
Thank you. Member McCauley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple comments. First off, I mean, I think the air is always getting cleaner, right? We're always working to make improvements. Just last week, Madera Board of Supervisors voted to do, I think, like a $15 million capital improvement project at our landfill. And that is directly tied to rulemaking here at this board, right? So that will positively impact the air quality of disadvantaged communities around Bearmead, as well as protect their water, which is great. So thank you for the thoughtfulness. I think when we work in a hurry, we lose the opportunity to be thoughtful in what we're doing. So thank you for taking your time with all this. I also wanted to make some comments in regards to fire. Whenever that comes up, my ears always perk up. But I think it's important we don't, you know, isolate that concern just to our forests. I think as Supervisor Rickman, you know, grass fires are a huge issue. And on that note, I do want to thank the staff here at Air Pollution Control District for working with CAL FIRE to help complete an 8-mile control burn on Road 41 just about 2 weeks ago. And that's proven to reduce the number of grass fires, you know, in Madera County. We can go back, we can look at historical data and say, this works. And so I think those are the programs that need to be carried forward. They need to be encouraged. They need to be identified as priority projects. And those are the types of projects that are going to prevent fires on the Altamont Pass, as again, Supervisor Rickman had referenced. So those are my comments. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you again for all the great work.
Thank you, Mayor Preciado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question regarding page number 7, which talks about the progress towards attainment of 2012 standard. And I noticed that, you know, as a resident of the southwest of the valley, I noticed we have 4 communities there: Colinga, Huron, Avenal, and Kerman City. I just would like to know if there's any data available regarding the progress or our situation, because we also do get through the year after the summer, during the summer, several wildfires around our area. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, on slide number 7, we don't show the average for Huron, but there is an air monitor in Huron. It's what's called a non-regulatory monitor, so we don't show it on this one as comparison against the standards, but it's a very clean annual average. I would compare it to Tranquility, which is on the site. All the way on the right-hand side, you see the Tranquility average. It's fairly close to the numbers we see in Tranquility, so the Huron concentrations are well below the annual standards.
Do you feel lucky? Because it's the low bar. It's great. All right. So we will go out to public comment. I just wanted to reiterate what I've heard too, again, because there's no time for a victory lap. You look at these numbers and you see just tremendous progress. And as we look at this tremendous progress, we're talking about new rulemaking to do better and to get down to a new standard, because now we have another goal, even though in some of the locations, I think they have the potential to make that goal. So as we hear from the public, which I expect to right now, there's still work to be done. We understand that. And I think Dr. Pacheco Warner kind of led off with the correct question. So I'm going to go out to the public now.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Modesto that would like to comment?
Public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? I do see some coming up to the podium.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Roger Isom. The California Cotton Ginners and Growers Association and the Western Agricultural Processors Association. Let me start by saying we don't like this plan. We wish you'd leave us the hell alone. But we obviously know there's air quality challenges here, and we know we're part of it. So with that being said, I want to start by commenting on that last part of the studies, the need to understand it. A lot of the board wasn't here when the initial work was done on PM10 with UC Davis, Texas A&M, ARS, and EPA as we actually went out into the field and did measurements. The entire CMP booklet was built on that actual science. That was done in conjunction with an area-wide study where we did saturation monitoring in various communities. We did air quality monitoring up and down the valley. We did speciation monitoring to determine what is in the makeup of the samples that was collected. We did it throughout the year, so we know what was impacting during the various parts of the year. And so the measures that were developed were dictated by that science. And that's how we got into attainment with PM10 so quickly, in all honesty, and how we've been able to make progress on PM 2.5. In this plan, we need to continue that. And on our part, we know with whether it's conservation management practices or low dust harvesters, we are going to continue to do that. In fact, we've already had meetings with USDA ARS on air quality monitoring that they've done. We've had meetings with USDA NRCS on additional practices that can qualify for incentive funding or additional work that we can do with them in terms of understanding what's going to work best for farmers. So we're committed to doing that, and we've already actually been meeting with the district for a few months now on the followed land, and that is a challenge, I will tell you up front, because to let weeds grow, we're dealing with a huge issue on cotton right now with ligas that comes out of the foothills and abandoned fields that we now have to address. So that is a challenge. I know it's been brought up here, the low dust harvesters. The one thing I would say is we have been actively promoting the use of low dust harvesters and will continue to do so. Certainly prices right now are putting pressure on that and the success of that program, but we're going to continue to push to do that. We've also been working on expanding. So low dust conditioners, which is another piece of equipment I won't get into, but does play a role, an increasingly important role in nut harvest. And so the new equipment's been developed and we're trying to promote that, actually working with NRCS and making it part of their program. The tractors, nobody has been working harder to get farmer funding to continue to replace tractors. We're going to continue to do that. I will finish with this. There's a bigger challenge that isn't addressed in this that everybody needs to be aware of and the board needs to help, and that's the electric infrastructure. There's huge problems with that. We have growers right now that want to replace pumps that can't, from diesel to electric, because they don't have the power to hook up. We are building nut facilities right now with natural gas generators not hooked up to electricity because there's not enough electric infrastructure. And when you look at the future with data centers going to require terawatts of power consumption. When you look at, everybody's talking about hydrogen, right? Well, how do you create hydrogen? Number one way is hydrolysis. Hydrolysis requires electricity. They're talking about terawatts of demand there. That is an issue that if we're going to be successful, has to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
Good morning, Manuel Cunha, Nisei Farmers League. I won't repeat some of the things that Roger has gone over. But again, first I want to accolade something very important that we brought up this morning. I think it's important the study agency to be rewoken and now start to work on this plan. But around the corner, they're going after 9 micrograms. And what that's going to do to us. The State Water Board adopted SGMA, not caring of what was going to happen to 1 million acres of farmland, not caring what's going to happen to Mendota, Tranquility, the workforce, the people that live in those communities, where they're going to go for their jobs, okay? Mostly agricultural. Tumbleweeds. Last week I was out on the west side. We were looking at some equipment that one of your staff, or 2 weeks ago, Ryan House and I went cruising to look at a disc plow that was putting agricultural chips 32 inches underground, which now allows that farmer to come in and use real soil around that tree versus chips, which the water just the tree dies. So we're out there, but we're also seeing a lot of tumbleweed piles. And what do you do with tumbleweeds? Big problems. The seed. So when abandoned farmland has to happen, now you got that issue to deal with, and that means fires, and that means all sorts of issues. And I will say this, solar is not the solution. But on some of these lands, I think we should be looking at massive reservoirs that we could build on the ground that farmers can rent their land for storage and re-putting water back into the ground rather than some solar heat wave panel. The lastly is CMPs. I do want to recommend, and I know staff and Samir have been tremendous on this, and Shiraz and everybody else. The CMP started in 2004. We sat with 45 farmers in the Fresno Farm Bureau. And we worked on the CMPs for days. It was not easy. I think the staff at the Air District got more gray hair during that presentational time. Then we went to Kern County, then we went to Stockton, Stanislaus, and sat with the farmers and came up with solutions and ideas and plans. That needs to happen as we move forward with CMP verifications, cleanup, or more exciting things that we're doing. But the study agency is going to be the key. Without science and facts, you just don't start throwing us under the bus. And that's what the State Water Board did with SGMA. Didn't care what the outcomes were going to be. Didn't care what's going to happen to Mendota. Didn't care what's going to happen to Avenel, Woodlake, Orosi, Cutler, Sultana. So we need to think about those communities. But again, I thank and I'm glad that wildfires is an important part, and we have to really protect our cattle ranges and all that. And that incentive concepts, and that the government, this governor should not be cutting the budget for wildfires. Probably should be cutting his choo-choo train. That's my comment. That's not anybody else's in this building. But again, thank you so much, staff. John, you and your team putting together this, and ARB, Michael, if you're listening, thank you for all the work that you've seen in the entire board. And Dr. Randall Pacheco, thank you for your efforts to going to the fields. A real champ, and we appreciate that very much, and your efforts of knowing what's going on out there. So thank you all, and especially the longtime member, Buddy. Thank you for your help and continuation on this and moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? I see one more coming up.
Hi, good morning. My name is Alexa Sanchez. I'm the Climate Equity Coordinator with CCAC, or Central California Asthma Collaborative. For those that aren't aware, Central California Asthma Collaborative, CCAC, is a regional community-based organization that serves vulnerable populations in the San Joaquin Valley that have asthma through asthma education, remediation, research, air quality monitoring, and electric vehicle awareness and policy advocacy. With that being said, one of our many programs, CARES, provides direct services to more than 3,000 patients per year with asthma all across the San Joaquin Valley. Since the region is known to have the worst air quality in the United States, it comes to no surprise that more than half of our patients are children suffering with chronic asthma. Since it's known that non-white and low-income populations are being disproportionately affected and exposed to higher levels of PM 2.5, it's important to take into consideration who's really being affected by wood burning, dirty off-road equipment, and other big sources of pollution, and therefore have more stringent rules and regulations. The proposed delay that this plan proposes to not meet an outdated PM 2.5 standard for an additional 5 years will unnecessarily expose a whole new generation of children in a region to chronically poor air quality in their most informative years, which is 0 to 5 years, when we know their lung and brain development are most important. CCC requests that you can reconsider amending this plan before it's submitted to CARB to find measures that help us meet the standard by the original deadline. We do not want another generation of children to suffer from our lack of strong protections. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexis.
Any other members of the public in Fresno? Seeing some more coming to the podium.
Hi, good morning. My name is Sammy Meneses. I am also part of Central California Asthma Collaborative. I am a climate and environmental justice associate there. I would just like to make one comment that moving forward in the project and the plan, that there should be a mention of community monitoring that provides local PM 2.5 data. CCAC is proud to have an extensive community air monitoring network that supplements state and federal monitors at PM 2.5 levels. And we also have a website and app called SJVAPCD that provides this to the community residents and should be more of a comprehensive data collection. So that's all I have to say, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. We do have some more coming to the podium.
Good morning. I'm Jacqueline Alonso with Rio Bravo Fresno, and I have a couple of questions in regards to slide 7. For the air monitoring, I'm assuming that these air monitors are continuous. And with that assumption, what is the calibration records for those? And what's the frequency of those calibrations? Another question I have is, we've discussed wildfires regularly in this meeting. Do we have numbers that show what the air monitoring is and how much of that is potentially skewed by the effects of the wildfires? So that way we know how much we really can control versus how much is out of our control. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please, Samir, go ahead.
Yeah, just quick response, if I may. Yeah, good question. So on the air monitoring side, the data is highly calibrated and there's a lot of QA/QC that goes in. It's actually overseen by both CARB and EPA, regularly audited, and actually very extensive work that goes into maintaining what's called a regulatory network. We're more than happy to talk offline as to what exactly that means. But every year there's an air monitoring network plan also that's available for public consumption that gets a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of exactly what the network entails. And there's quite a bit of literature out there as well as to what those requirements are that we're happy to summarize and point folks to. Then on the second question, the answer is yes and no. And with respect to wildfires and fully understanding, their impact, there's quite a bit of work that we've actually been a major part of, but other parts of the country are also working on, increasingly so actually. For example, on the East Coast of the United States, who's been impacted in recent years by fires from Canada. There's the Western United States that has been impacted and continues to be impacted by wildfires. A lot of work actually goes into looking at the PM and other impacts from fires, and they also impact ozone. By the way, it's not just PM 2.5. And so we have some sense of that. We've been looking at this in recent years. For example, and are continuing to work on that. That's one of the big functions of our air quality analysis section here. And the impact is significant. In those years where we have major wildfires, and they don't necessarily have to be even, right here around the valley. Often a fire can be actually fairly far away and actually can generate, quite a bit of impact here. Those impacts can be major drivers in terms of our ability to attain and not attain in these wildfire type years. So we've documented this. It's available out there. For example, for the 65 microgram 24-hour standard, that was a big factor in looking at that standard, and is going to be a big factor. There's national recognition of the importance of this. So when EPA adopted the new PM 2.5 standard earlier this year, along with that standard, new policies and commitments were made by the federal government to look at this issue, because it's not only about wildfires, it's also about significantly increased prescribed burning. And how do you also make sure that those emissions are properly accounted for under Clean Air Act implementation? And to answer the question that was raised, which is how much of these emissions and background concentrations are actually under the control of us and CARB and others, and how much of those emissions maybe occur through other mechanisms that basically have to be understood. So there's a lot of work. So we have some understanding of this. I think that work is only going to grow, and that the importance of that understanding is only going to grow in the coming years, especially as we think about getting, get to 12 here, hopefully very soon, and then down to 9 is going to be a very challenging level without a better understanding of that impact.
Thank you.
Any other members of the public in Fresno? We have one more coming up.
I'll try to be really quick. Hi, my name is Colby Morrow. I'm with Southern California Gas Company. Thank you to all the board members. And I just wanted to do a shout out for Emily Nealand. Embarrass her just a little bit. So what I do is I have to translate all of this to all the other air quality professionals at SoCal Gas, plus our management. And sometimes it gets a little confusing between this plan and the contingency plan. And if you go to your planning page, there's quite a lot going on. And Emily is always available, always calls me back, goes through everything, even though, I should know everything, but she just does a great job. And I just wanted to do a shout out.
Thank you very much.
How much you pay her, Emily?
Cool.
Okay, seeing no more in-person comments, we have some online. First up, Cynthia Pinto Cabrera.
Good morning, Cynthia.
Good morning, folks. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera here with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. Today, I'm not only speaking as an advocate, but as a Madera resident and asthmatic, and a coach with Madera Unified School District. Today, this board is considering a plan that is 6 months overdue. A plan that highlights a long history of failure to meet standards on time. We have not met a single standard on time, and that is why we're facing a public health crisis today. We are normalizing chronic health issues like cancer because they are so common in the Valley, especially amongst our people of color. We're not only allowing our health to suffer due to failure to attain, our economy is also suffering as a result of failure to attain these standards. Recent study out of UC Merced calculated the cost of air pollution in the Valley and demonstrated that we could see cost savings of about $46,214,702 from decreased concentrations of PM 2.5. This is a significant amount of money for low income and already overburdened communities. In 2018, when the board at the time initially approved this plan, staff was extremely confident that we would meet the attainment deadline by 2025. The deadline that is stated in the Clean Air Act. Now we're seeing a request for a 5-year delay, and the main ask I have today is to not grant this additional 5-year delay for the sake of our communities, kids that I coach, the kids that we all have, our families. For our health, we need clean air now. Valley Air is doing a great job of supporting efforts to address mobile source emissions in our communities with adoption earlier this year of those large truck charging stations along the I-5 and the 99, as well as the collaboration that was just noted with Valley Can. And there's also great strides being made to protect indoor air quality with the clean air program that has given many residents clean air purifiers. These are all great initiatives, and we do congratulate the staff and the board members on these successes. As we look towards the future with even lower standards in the horizon, those initiatives must continue while also front-loading many much-needed improvements on regulations and enforcement, including banning unnecessary residential wood burning, phasing out dirty off-road agricultural equipment, strengthening the indirect source rule, and requiring additional NOx controls on stationary oil and gas sources. These improvements can be done and must be done now. Our communities, our kids, our families can't wait 5 more years. There are actions that can be taken now and provide much needed health benefits to all. Again, I ask the board to not grant this 5-year delay, and also request interested in having us request the staff to answer that question on the district's position on the South Coast indirect source rule. I'm curious, since that's not really included in the plan, as it's not something that's being looked at actively. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Next up is Janet Dietz-Kamay.
Welcome back, Janet.
Thank you. Many hours were put to the 2018 PM 2.5 plan with expectations of a reduction to 15 milligrams per cubic meter by 2020. We, CARB, San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, and Clean Air Advocates have been working this plan since 2015. PM 2.5 is of immediate concern to those of us with asthma and who have other respiratory diseases. I was in the emergency room when I first learned I had asthma. We moved here to Fresno in 2003. 2006, I was in the emergency room. I was exposed to particulates, which resulted in me becoming sick with rhinitis, sinusitis, bronchitis, and by the time I was in the ER, first stage of pneumonia. I was very sick, and I was very sick in a matter of weeks, 1 week after being exposed. Due to climate change, the San Joaquin Valley is in a very different environment than we were when the 2018 PM 2.5 plan was first introduced. Presently, our air is hotter, our forests are drier. The conditions are very different from how it had been when we began this plan. We now have wildfires, forest fires, grass fires, any number of fires due to our hotter air, the drier conditions of the landscape. And now this is something that is going to be annual. This is in addition to already present PM 2.5 sources we experience here in the San Joaquin Valley. There are residents who have no air conditioning and have windows open in the hot summers we now endure. This population ends up in emergency rooms. This population experiences pollution sickness, including young children having asthma attacks. For San Joaquin residents, current real-time, daily safe air quality is critical for all of our good health and quality of life, as Dr. Sheriffs pointed out. A quick measure to reduce PM 2.5 is restrict residential burning, especially during inversion months. I spend most of those months inside to protect myself from ending up in an emergency room. This is a critical problem here for residents in the San Joaquin Valley, and the extra 5 years will make lives very difficult. I am 79 years old. 2030 is a long time for me to hope for cleaner air where I can go out and breathe, and all the other people with respiratory diseases living in this valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Hey, Samir, before we go on to the next speaker, could you address what it might be good to address the ISR rule, because I think we're going to hear about South Coast and kind of where we are.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just taking some notes. Was planning on responding to a couple of these comments and definitely can speak to that here just really quickly on that one. Yeah, so we don't have a position per se on the South Coast rule. We were definitely taking a look at it. I think just by way of background, just context is really important. The board's adopted an ISR rule here. It's been almost 20 years now that the San Joaquin Valley has had an ISR rule. It applies much more broadly than the South Coast ISR rule. So for example, our rule covers residential, commercial, retail, and warehouses. So for basically 20 years now, we've been regulating and examining what are called the indirect impacts of these types of projects and continue to evolve it, because what happens over time is those issues also evolve, right? So I'll give you one big example. When we adopted our ISR rule almost 20 years ago now, at that time, there was no truck and bus regulation, and trucks were still transitioning to the 2010 truck technology, which is 90% cleaner than technology at that time. And so we're seeing these transitions happening, whether it's passenger vehicles or heavy duty trucking fleets, that are all part of the emissions that are considered in that kind of a program. And so we've also been evolving. So for example, with warehouses, we're very, very interested and have been updating continually the types of mitigation that we look at in the context of ISR, say specific to warehouses. And so we have all that information available on our webpage. Later in the year, we provide the annual report to the board on the ISR program and its implementation. In that presentation, we do plan on continuing to talk about different pathways. One, for example, being taking a look at some of the recent developments in South Coast and how we can continue to collaborate with them on some of the things that they're doing down there. That has been of interest to the board and certainly is part of that conversation. The last part I would say is that in the context of state implementation plans, EPA has never given us or South Coast any credit whatsoever for the reductions that are potentially achievable through the ISR program. So it actually doesn't, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, there's basically no credit provided, although the board for 20 years now felt it's still important to engage and to look for mitigation. And it's integrated into some of the CEQA process as well. There's this very complicated program, but there's more information. There's quite a bit of information on our implementation online, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation with the board and with the public a little bit later in the year as well.
Thank you for that.
Next online comment, Thomas Menz.
Thomas, welcome.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this plan doesn't include all the measures that I'd like to see to reduce residential wood smoke. Feasible measures that other districts have adopted. But at least this plan now includes the month of March in the season subject to mandatory curtailments. Although this apparently does nothing to lower projected residential wood smoke emissions in the district's emissions inventory. And I wonder why the curtailments simply don't go year round as other air districts have done. And I continue to wonder why the many thousands of old, highly polluting uncertified wood stoves haven't been permanently banned, as they've long been banned in other districts. And I wonder why homes with propane heaters are allowed a sole source of heat exemption. Other districts don't allow this. And I wonder why the use of wood burning devices that are not EPA certified is allowed in those homes with no other source of heat. Another district in California only allows EPA certified devices. And I wonder why homes built with gas heating have been allowed to remove the heaters and then claim that they have no other source of heat. And I wonder why registration of all homes claiming no other source of heat isn't required as other air districts do require. And I wonder why in non-hotspot counties, the use of all wood burning devices, including non-essential EPA certified wood burning heaters, isn't banned on days forecast above 30 micrograms per cubic meter, the bare minimum of protection that other districts provide. And I wonder why non-essential residential wood burning for the purpose of cooking both indoors and outdoors, isn't banned year-round on days forecast above 30 micrograms per cubic meter. And I can't help wondering if, had these perfectly feasible measures been adopted and included in the 2018 plan, if we'd even be here today, needing to ask for an extension. I certainly don't believe that still another plan that includes a deadline extension should be accepted by EPA absent these perfectly feasible measures. I continue to believe the district's holistic comparisons with other districts are flawed or contrary to EPA's 2016 guidance for PM25 plans and result in de facto de minimis exemptions to the most stringent measures that EPA's 2016 rule for PM25 plans expressly forbids. And I continue to hope that EPA will revisit this issue and avoid approval of yet another PM25 plan for the San Joaquin Valley that doesn't get the necessary emission reductions to avoid ending in failure. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Next online comment, Christine Zimmerman.
Hi, my name's Christine Luther Zimmerman. I'm with the Western States Petroleum Association. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I don't think my clock has started. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. Thank you. I just wanted to thank district staff. We just adopted rules for our steam generators. We've spent hundreds of hours and millions of dollars forcing the technology to get our rules to where they are. They were just adopted. Certainly, we are getting closer all the time. I don't think there's a direct correlation that can be drawn between MSM for those generators here in the San Joaquin Valley and those in the South Coast. And for that reason, we maintain that we have done the very best we can for right now. That does not mean we don't continue to force technology and to drive emissions down, particularly in regard to PM 2.5. Raising a child who has reactive airway disease, and we do not take these issues extremely seriously. But we do want to thank the district with whom we've worked extremely hard on these rules and will continue to. We provided all the data that we could. We looked at costs. We looked at technology. We conducted special tests. We've done our dead level best and left everything we had on the field with these. So we are where we are. We're doing the very best that we can, and we look forward to doing even more in the future. We appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christine. And sorry I didn't prompt you.
Thank you. Next online comment, Ruben Rodriguez.
Welcome, Ruben.
Awesome. Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Beautiful. Buenos dias. My name is Ruben Rodriguez. I am the Director of Air Monitoring Initiatives with Central California Environmental Justice Network. And today what I would like to do is share one of my coworkers' comment. I hope I don't exceed the 3 minutes, but if I do exceed the 3 minutes, I hope you guys understand the importance of this message and allow the message to be heard. So awesome. Thank you guys. So my name is Natalie Delgado, and I am a policy associate with Central California Environmental Justice Network. I am here to comment on the 2012 PM 2.5 standard plan and to emphasize that the 5-year delay requested should not be granted to the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Time and time again, local and state regulators have failed to adopt the necessary measures and meet attainment deadlines to ensure clean, breathable air for the San Joaquin Valley residents. Failure to meet the 2012 PM 2.5 standard plan is a public health crisis and jeopardizes the health and well-being of existing and future generations of the valley. Research has explicitly shown that PM 2.5 pollution causes a range of health impacts such as respiratory and cardiovascular issues, as well as preterm birth and infant mortality. Furthermore, communities of color and low-income communities bear the disproportionate burden of PM 2.5 exposure. For example, South Central Fresno comprises primarily of Latinx and Black residents and has been selected as a high priority area for the state to reduce emissions. In a recent health assessment by UC Merced for the city of Fresno, researchers found that rates of preterm birth were 9.7% inside the South Central Fresno AB 617 community borders and 8.5% for the rest of the city. Similarly, the rates of infant mortality were 8.9 per 1,000 inside and 6 per 1,000 outside of the boundaries. Many residents who live within the boundaries have higher long-term exposures to traffic and diesel emissions due to the concentrations of industrial zoning, freeways, truck routes, and major streets. Though this report was conducted in the city of Fresno, it sheds light on the adverse pregnancy impacts of indirect sources that other parts of the valley may be experiencing and the need to address them appropriately. In order to reduce the impacts from indirect sources such as heavy-duty trucks and warehouses, the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District must adopt a more stringent indirect source rule. Since the Valley's IRS adoption in 2017, the South Coast Air Management Control District has adopted a more stringent ISR than applies to existing warehouses, not only planned ones. To ensure that the Valley ISR complies with the Clean Air Act's most stringent measures requirements, it must be updated with the following tasks. Apply ISR requirements to all warehouses. Use compliant options to meet ISR obligations. And require reporting of operating and truck trip data. Valley residents do not need another 5 years delay. We need action now. And I just want to add on my end that each and every single one of you guys sitting on that board will be remembered. You guys will be remembered. 5 years is a long time. You guys have children, you guys have grandchildren, you guys all have family members.
Appreciate your comments, Ruben. Got to wrap it up. Thank you.
Of course, we got to wrap it up. This is a very important issue here. And the way that
Thank
you
you.
guys want people to go over, I think, we also need that extra time to express our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Kevin Abernathy.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the governing board, I think it's pretty fitting that I get to be the dairy guy in the third leg of the stool for my two counterparts, Mr. Isom and Cunha. As being one of that trio that has been around since the inception of the SB 700 series back in 2004, I really want to highlight the dairy industry's partnership with the district and as personally being engaged in the development of the science, looking at quantification and the management practices that develop the world's most comprehensive and stringent menu approach, along with the science that has looked at California-specific management and to test and verify the percent reductions that are currently in Rule 4550 and 4570. I want to also express my heartfelt thanks. When I read through Appendix F, specifically pages F12 through F78, it was a walk through history for myself as one that has worked with Ag Tech and the study agency and the scientists to develop the SOPs and the research projects to identify and quantify and find corresponding practices to meet the reduction goals. It was truly amazing to read. And the fact that the district has always stood by the fact that they would base regulations based on science has been, and in my opinion, continues to be exactly what has to be done. And with that, I'm very proud that I've been able to be a part of that and continue the relationship with the district and for the dairy industry to do our part, not only for public health, but also, most importantly, this is one side of the equation that really doesn't get discussed much, keep businesses in the state of California. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kevin.
Next up is Mark Rose.
Welcome, Mark.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I appreciate this opportunity to comment. My name is Mark Rose, and I'm a program manager with National Parks Conservation Association. Over 5 years ago, in 2018, the Valley Air District voted on a plan for the 2012 annual PM 2.5 standard that staff claimed would reach attainment by 2025. Not only are we now not on track to meet that 2025 deadline, but the 2018 plan was partially disapproved by EPA due to numerous deficiencies that advocates repeatedly highlighted before that plan was voted on by the Valley Air District. Now here we are, over 5 years later, looking to pass a plan that is substantially nearly identical to the 2018 plan, and the district is asking for an additional 5 years to ensuring that Valley residents will continue to breathe dirty air that harms their health until at least 2030. Even in 2030, Southeast Bakersfield is modeled to only meet attainment by 0.02 micrograms, leaving little to no margin for error. Sadly, there are numerous additional measures left out of this plan that could get the Valley into attainment sooner. In order to receive an additional 5-year delay, the district must show that it is enacting the most stringent measures that have already been adopted in other state plans or achieved in practice in other jurisdictions. In reviewing the district's most stringent measures analysis, I unfortunately have to disagree that the district is adopting the most stringent measures available, and thus believe that the district has not met its legal obligations to be granted a 5-year delay. These additional most stringent measures that the district could adopt include updating the Valley's indirect source rule to include more stringent provisions adopted in the South Coast ISR rule, such as applying ISR requirements to existing warehouses and new ones greater than 100,000 square feet, requiring SCR on additional categories of combustion turbines, boilers, steam generators, and process heaters to align with more stringent South Coast rules. If you're interested in having more information on that, I would point to the expert analysis by Megan Williams, which was attached to the Advocate Coalition comment letter we submitted. And lastly, it is time for the Valley to finally phase out unnecessary residential wood burning, which contributes over 5 tons per day of direct PM 2.5 emissions in the winter months. While we do appreciate the district's proposal to extend the no burn period into March, the reductions from that single rule change are so minimal that it'll do little to nothing to help us meet attainment. We know other jurisdictions like Tacoma, Pierce County in Washington State and Santa Rosa here in California have achieved in practice a phase out of all burning in non-EPA certified devices, making those rules clearly on their face more stringent than the Valley's convoluted check before you burn program. I'll also note that since EPA stated that the district's wood burning measures were the most stringent, they are on record saying that a phase out of burning in non-certified devices is feasible. Other measures like addressing soil NOx and ammonia should also be on the table. More can clearly be done to meet attainment sooner, and until additional measures are included in this plan, I ask that you deny the district's request to delay attainment by an additional 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next up, we have Jasmine Martinez.
Hi, Jasmine. Welcome.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Jasmine Martinez, a Kern County resident and coalition coordinator with the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. The San Joaquin Valley struggle with PM 2.5 pollution and failure to meet several air quality standards is an egregious and severe air pollution and health crisis. The health and lives of Valley residents, including my own family, have been compromised for too long. Proposed delay in meeting the 2012 PM 2.5 standard until 2030 is unacceptable, and further delay will only exacerbate the situation. The Valley's history shows that delays do not lead to effective solutions. We need a commitment from the district to act with urgency and do everything possible to meet these standards as soon as possible. The San Joaquin Valley cannot continue to be the most air basin in the nation. We deserve clean air now, not in another decade. I echo earlier comments requesting the district must adopt more stringent measures, including strengthening the indirect source rule, implementing stringent NOx controls, and regulating ammonia sources. These measures have proven effective in other regions and should be applied here to achieve meaningful reductions in PM 2.5 pollution. Furthermore, transparency and accountability are crucial. The public deserves access to the emission inventory database and cited sources to ensure genuine public participation and review. Without this documentation, the district's claims are unsubstantiated and undermine public trust. The San Joaquin Valley cannot afford to wait any longer. The health and lives of our residents depend on swift and decisive action. I urge the district to adopt the necessary measures to get us to PM 2.5 attainment and ensure a healthier future for all Valley residents. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Next online comment, Bill Hendrickson.
Welcome, Bill.
Welcome. Good morning, board members and the public. My comment is related to stationary sources. As this proposed plan does point out, 93% reduction in stationary source NOx emissions from 1980 to 2023. That's the largest reduction out of all the sources. And although that is the case, I haven't seen, and I don't see in this plan any funding or grants related to like the boiler rule 4306 or 4320 and the potential amendments to rule 4309 dryer rule. There's a lot of other grants and funding available for mobile source and on-road mobile, which I understand, that's something that is probably due to the lack of reduction from those sources. But as an industry representative, if we want to use the stick instead of the carrot, and possibly drive industry out of this district into maybe more favorable districts that make processing more beneficial, and could cause mobile source emissions from transportation out of the valley to increase, and be less efficient for our agricultural industry in the valley that relies on industry that's based in the valley to process these materials. So I guess one question that I would have is, are there any future funding opportunities for stationary source industry and businesses to implement these upcoming rules for boilers and the possible potential amendment to the dryer rule? That's all I have.
Thank you very much. And Bill, we're going to save the questions until the end. We're scribbling and we'll answer that. Thank you.
Next online comment, Perry Ellerts.
Welcome, Perry.
Welcome. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Perry Ellerts with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. As mentioned, the deadline to submit this 2012 plan was in December of last year. So unfortunately, the Valley is late in submitting this very important plan and is now asking for a 5-year extension, which is even more disappointing to hear and see. This is definitely concerning that now, because there's an even stricter PM 2.5 standard passed by EPA, which the Valley will need to meet. And given the difficulty to meet just this 1997 standard, the Air District and CARB need to work together with local community and coming up with a clear and strong path forward for how the Valley is going to meet these standards. Not just focusing on how to barely meet the 2012 standard by 2030, but how we're going to meet the new standards sooner rather than later. There are a number of control measures for further emission reductions that Leadership Council, residents, and other organizations have suggested today and in the past. Those are related to improving the indirect source rule. The Valley must also add measures to control emissions of ag equipment, pesticides, ban fireplaces, and new developments, and improve the district's animal confinement rule. We're also disappointed in the lack of community engagement with the portions of the plan which have already been submitted, especially the Valley's ammonia precursor analysis, which we disagree with the assertion that ammonia is not a precursor to PM 2.5. Ammonia has been historically underregulated and could be some of the easiest and cheapest opportunities for emission reductions, which could result in large health benefits for the Valley. We're also disappointed with the lack of community engagement with the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act assurances. We ask that this board not grant the 5-year extension, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Perry.
Next is Veronica Aguirre.
Hi, Veronica.
Hello, good morning. This is Veronica Aguirre. I'm a community organizer with Central California Environmental Justice Network. I am also a resident of the community of Avenel. So I'm also here as a concerned parent and friend and whatever else that could be. First off, I would like to extend my sincere condolences for the loss of your colleague and my deepest respect to his family and to all of you. I would like to extend that condolence to you all. But I also would like to ask that the extension not be approved for many reasons. And speaking on behalf of a mother, my children, I have two daughters that are athletes, and in the last year have been diagnosed with asthma. One is 18 and one is 16. They're, like I said, they're athletes, lifeguards, spend a lot of time outside, and unfortunately this last year have had many issues asthma related. And I know this is a big effect with other kids in my community, as well as throughout the San Joaquin Valley. I appreciate the fact that on page 4, you guys stated all the different types of health issues that one, PM2.5 can cause one, for their health. But then also on page 20 gave some data that is actually very scary, because now my daughters are part of that statistic. And not to be selfish and only think of myself, but I'm thinking of those in the community, us especially who live in frontline communities. That it isn't nothing that nobody knows that the San Joaquin Valley has some of the worst air quality around, as even stated in the American Lung Association's report that they recently gave. Some of the communities that are very close to us were of the top 10, and that also is very concerning. And also, I'd like to, in closing, I wanted to mention, send a thank you to Mayor Preciado for mentioning the concern of wildfires in Kettleman City, Avenel, Coalinga, and Huron. Although I guess they aren't noticed but the reason being is because they're considered fires of spontaneous combustion. There's fires that have started due to the manure at Harris Ranch, the composting outside of Avenel, other ag burns that aren't considered wildfires, but they are affecting our communities, and they should be considered, because those are reaching families who already are suffering from many respiratory issues and are already susceptible to other types of health related issues. And again, thank you very much. Please consider not extending the plan.
Thank you for your comments, Veronica.
Next up, Ileana Navarro.
Welcome, Ileana.
Hello, thank you all for the opportunity to provide comments on this matter and for respectfully listening to these comments, as your decisions affect the lives of millions of the people in the Valley, including myself. My name is Ileana Navarro, and I currently reside in Bakersfield. I strongly disapprove of the district's efforts to clean our air. These high levels of fine particulate matter have affected the Valley's residents for far too long, and delaying the attainment for PM 2.5 can be detrimental not only to mine and my family's health, but to millions of residents of the San Joaquin Valley. This air is impacting our current and our future health. Low-income residents are suffering the most of the Valley's worst in the nation PM 2.5 pollution. We cannot afford another 5 years of breathing unhealthy air. That's 5 years of countless trips to doctor's office, 5 years of paying for asthma medication. I really want to emphasize that while to you all this may just be another delay to a work deadline, this is a scary reality to me and many residents. The district needs to do more now, and I ask that the inspection not be approved. Additional controls must be adopted to meet the requirements sooner than 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Ileana.
Thank you. Next up, Luis Ramirez.
Morning, Luis.
Good morning. My name is Luis Ramirez. I'm with the SJVAPCD Farmers League, and I want to want to support the plan. We have a lot of small growers with a tractor program, and a lot of the Latino farmers, and they have always told us that they're very thankful for the incentives that the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District offers, and our industry has always stepped forward to work with our air district. We have reduced 90% of the ag burn over the last 10 years, and all I want to say is that we need to trust the process. This is something that we can't just decide on now. It is going to take some time, but those are my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Luis.
Next up, Katie Clemenson.
Morning, Katie.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and you're just listening to our comments. I'm an educator and a teacher coach throughout the Central Valley, but also the state of California. Since 2016, many of our ninth graders have had higher rates of asthma than reading proficiency. This is a dire public health crisis happening now under the watch of this board and this air district. Samir asked for more research, but there has been extensive research identifying the sources of PM 2.5 and PM 10 in this valley, and even more documenting the impacts on populations, especially those most vulnerable. I have a growing list of high schoolers that would be eager to talk more with you about this, but what we need right now is action, not in the best interests of the private sector, but in the best interests of the people of this valley. I echo the call to include community-based air quality monitoring and an increase in district transparency to build trust among impacted communities, and strongly reject the 5-year delay on attainment. A public health crisis of this magnitude requires intentional, motivated leadership. The well-being of the people in this valley will be your legacy, and I hope you all will consider that in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. Next up, Genevieve Amsalem.
Morning, Genevieve. Did I say that right?
Hello, can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Genevieve Amsalem. I'm also with CCEJN, and I'm coming to you 39 weeks pregnant. I didn't know if I would make this meeting today. But what 5 years means for me and for so many people in the San Joaquin Valley is, like the first woman from CCAC said, it's another generation of young people growing up not being able to breathe. We've got 9 months in utero that will affect individual life forever, and then those formative years of lung development. And so 5 years, like Ileana said, could seem like just a delay and a deadline, but really
Genevieve, we've lost you, I believe.
Yeah, her Zoom dropped from the panel. Move to next commenter, Susanna Canseco.
Welcome, Susanna.
Sí, hola, buenas tardes, ¿me escuchan? Sí, bueno.
Sí, bueno.
Ok, perfecto. Bueno, pues gracias por permitirme dar mi comentario. Yo soy aquí del Condado de Madera y trabajo como alcance comunitaria para la Red de Justicia Ambiental en lugares rurales y sobre todo para trabajadores del campo. Y mi comentario el día de hoy es que como residente comprometida del Valle de San Joaquín, estoy profundamente preocupada por las continuas altas contaminaciones por partículas finas en nuestro aire y el impacto significativo que esto tiene en la salud de nuestra comunidad. Esta situación no solo es una cuestión ambiental, sino una crisis de salud pública que afecta particularmente a todos. El plan actual que se está votando en esta suma importancia, los residentes del Valle de San Joaquín merecemos respirar aire limpio y saludable. No podemos permitirnos seguir atrasando las acciones necesarias para cumplir con los estándares de la calidad del aire. Creo que las medidas propuestas deben de ser ambiciosas y efectivas para asegurar que finalmente alcancemos y mantengamos estos estándares. Creo que también es vital que se implementen soluciones que den prioridad a la salud de nuestra comunidad por encima de cualquier otro interés. Mejorar la calidad del aire no solo reduce los riesgos de enfermedades respiratorias y cardíacas, sino que también mejorará nuestra calidad del aire de vida a través de nuevas inversiones y fomentar un desarrollo económico sostenible en nuestra región. Les insisto que consideren profundamente esta reflexión y que actuemos con determinación y compromiso al adoptar medidas más energéticas y efectivas ahora. Podemos asegurar un futuro más saludable y próspero para todos los residentes del Valle de San Joaquín, incluyendo a todos los que estamos presentes. Esta es una oportunidad para demostrar el liderazgo y responsabilidad hacia la salud y el bienestar de nuestra comunidad. Agradezco su atención y dedicación a este asunto crítico y confío en que tomarán las decisiones correctas para proteger nuestro aire y nuestra salud. Gracias.
Gracias, Susana.
Thank you. I do have Genevieve who's back on. We're going to translate that comment first.
Bear with us, we're having a technical difficulty.
Go to Genevieve for a second.
Sorry, I'm going to go to Genevieve. We lost her while she was, let me give her opportunity to share.
Thank
Go ahead,
you so
Genevieve.
much. I apologize. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be brief, but what I wanted to share was that in 2015, we failed to meet both our 1997 24-hour and annual standard. And we got a 5-year extension. And then in 2020, we failed to meet that annual standard. And then for our 2006 standard, we failed to submit our SIP by the deadline. And then we failed to meet our non-attainment deadline. And then for our 2012 standard, we're supposed to meet it next year. And in the SIP that we had all worked so hard on, we were told that we will meet this standard, that the plan will achieve the emission reductions we needed. And again, we're going to fail to meet that.
Now, and you can listen on the computer. Yeah. You have a transcript. I can play it back right here. She can listen. Sure.
Katrina. So we were, Mr. Chair, so we were having some issues with the live interpretation. So I think, well, I'm just going to give it a shot real quick. I'm actually fluent in Spanish, and then maybe with Dr. Pacheco Werner here, but I want to provide a very high level summary of the earlier comment that was raised. And then I think if need be, we can have her repeat the comment, and we have interpretation here now. But she expressed, the commenter expressed concerns with a 5-year delay, expressed ongoing concern with the ability to, our inability to meet prior standards, and emphasize the public health impact of delay and the importance of making sure that we meet these standards as soon as possible. And a very high level summary, a little bit more there, but I don't know if I missed any, or I'm getting a thumbs up from Dr. Pacheco Werner.
This time there are no further online comments.
There's one more here in person, I believe.
Oh, I'm
here.
sorry. There's
Just
one more in
yeah.
person.
Apologize about that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Chris McLaughlin, California Cotton Ginners and Growers Association, Western Agricultural Processors Association, here to speak on behalf of the plan submission and ask for your approval. I'd really like to highlight that this is the first district in the country to achieve the 24-hour PM10 standard after a serious non-attainment designation, the 1-hour ozone standard, as well as the 1997 daily PM2.5 standard. This district and you as the board have a proven track record of achieving these constantly tightening emission reductions. And the proposal in front of you includes a wide variety of regulatory proposals and strategies that our membership are dealing with and impacting their business, their day-to-day operations, specifically pointing out, the tractor replacement like we talked about, but even looking into stuff like boilers, steam generators. Our membership are making those adjustments and retrofits, moving to more tighter control efficiencies on that equipment, as well as usage requirements on it. And so with the proposal in front of you, we understand that it's addressing a lot of the concerns specific for industry. And so we ask for your support on that. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Mr. Chair, I want to provide a couple of quick responses, clarifications. I know we're running deep into the meeting here, so I'll try to hit on a lot of the themes that came up during the comments, and happy to take any more questions. But first, I just wanted to appreciate the strong public participation on the plan. It's really I think representative of the interest that we do get on these very important efforts, and just wanted to thank all the residents in particular who raised some important topics and questions, and wanted to provide at least some reassurance on some of the questions that came up. I'll start with residential wood burning. The plan does include, as I mentioned earlier, a regulatory commitment in it to continue ratcheting down. As the board here knows, we've continued to evolve that strategy quite a bit over the years. Every couple of years, going back, amending the rule, lowering thresholds. I think it was mentioned actually even by one of the commenters that EPA has approved our rule as the most stringent measure. Although we continue looking at opportunities, and I think some were even mentioned earlier during the comment. So we're very eager to open that process and look at extending the winter season, and then also just entertaining and evaluating other things that could be done, and then returning to the board with an updated measure on that category. On the ISR rule, I just wanted to, I think I captured most of the thought there, but I just wanted to again reiterate that we are continuing to look at that. I mean, we've led in that space. Just to be frank on that topic, it took a number of years before another region could basically put a measure that's really only looking at warehouses right now, whereas we've been looking at warehouses and overall. And the board's heard some recent presentations on this, and some of that was captured today across our different sources. We do have most stringent measures. That was how, for example, EPA was able to fully approve the 2006 plan that the board had for the 2006 standard, the plan that was pulled together for that, which was also, by the way, litigated and then upheld actually in court. So I just wanted to also just mention that as well. Although, again, this is an ongoing process, right? So these are all snapshots in time. And as we go back and look at these different areas, there certainly will be opportunity for continuing to ratchet down on those emissions. I also wanted to mention on the ammonia question that came up. I think a few of the commenters raised that question. That is a continually also looked at category of interest. So in this plan, CARB actually led, and we also, there was a portion of it that we also worked on an updated analysis on really what role ammonia plays with respect to PM2.5. And once again, CARB found that ammonia is not a significant precursor to PM2.5. And the analysis is extensive. It conforms with the guidance that EPA has pulled together. It's not to say that we're not working to reduce ammonia emissions through measures, for example, like the manure management rule that we have in place, say for dairies, where a lot of the measures that we implement to reduce VOC emissions also reduce ammonia emissions. So I wanted to note that, and really another kind of just general response and observation around, this is a joint plan. that was developed with CARB. And some of the issues that have come up today, and I mentioned wildfires and the increasing role that they play. Dr. Sheriff mentioned that as well earlier. The mobile source transformation that the state, the region is going through, a lot of which, by the way, when you look back at the 2018 plan, there was some very ambitious transformation that was actually a part of that plan. This board has delivered on every single measure, by the way, that was included in that plan for this standard, and actually even additional measures. So for example, in that plan, the ag burn phase out, the open burning of agricultural materials was not, for example, a quantified or, and yet here we are actually by the end of this year, realizing that virtual phase out of open burning. This board has delivered on every single measure. It's very difficult to replace tens of thousands of trucks. That was one of the big goals, for example, that was in that plan that CARB had committed to. That was very difficult to do, and it was really a very evolving topic. And now what you see here in this plan is where we are with that mobile source strategy, where there's even things like the inspection and maintenance program that were not quite envisioned at that time that are now in place. Things like the hydrogen, the infrastructure comment that came up, very important to note that it's going to be very difficult actually to make the transitions that we're all relying on without there being a really critical look at the infrastructure needs, right? And it's not just for vehicles. We're also calling for electrification of some of the residential, commercial. That's all extra load on the infrastructure all at the same time. So there's a lot of transformational changes that we're all looking forward to that this plan also relies on that are really going to require all of us to roll up our sleeves, the advocacy community, the affected regulated communities, agriculture and others, in order for all of us to actually work together to ultimately realize the goals that are in this plan. So I want to recognize those various comments and just appreciate the public for being here and continuing to amplify what are some very strong levels or some interest in some categories that we're also very interested in pursuing very aggressively in the coming years. But it's going to take a very, very strong state support, very strong federal support. A lot of these issues that came up are not actually either the jurisdiction of this board or are only going to be successful with strong support from the state and the federal government as well, and the advocacy community.
There was one question from Bill about helping with boilers. I can't.
Apologies. Yes, I want to get to that question as well. Yes, the question related to whether or not we see funding for some of the stationary source units, like let's say a boiler. So traditionally, we have not provided incentive funding in those categories, and we regulated them very heavily over the years, 95 to 99%, depending on the category. I do think that as we look ahead to electrification, to the next generation of whatever that technology is, there is a very big question around, and I think an opportunity around, how do we actually make sure that the investments needed to make those technologies work are indeed feasible. And so, and I'm thinking, one of the priorities of this board in the past, for example, has been supporting some of the incentive programs. We've actually been involved in, we haven't directly provided the funding, but we've been involved in supporting some of the what are called energy efficiency programs. Some of those measures actually are looking exactly at these technologies and seeing if we can move them into the next generation of technology. I think that there may be some opportunities for that in the future, but a lot of the funding streams that we receive really are geared towards either some of those area sources, like with some of the residential, for example, wood burning reduction that we do, or mobile sources. Unfortunately, those funding sources, the traditional ones, are not geared towards the stationary sources, but there may be some newer funding sources, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act funding or others where, you get a co-benefit maybe for greenhouse gases as well as criteria air pollutant. And we're very happy to engage on that with anybody who's interested in looking at that. And we have been supportive in the past as some of those programs have been pulled together. It's been part of the legislative platform actually to look for those types of funding sources. So we definitely have an interest in that going forward.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I just want to reiterate with CARB. CARB is a partnership, and we have a member, Dr. Pacheco Warner, who is the liaison to CARB and this board. And she's seen it from both sides, but we seem to see it in the same direction, right? With CARB, we have an aligned view of how to get where we need to be. I have no doubt that this is that saying that if we had more firefighters and more police officers, everything would be safer. And this board is always here to continue to weigh. We are a public health agency. And again, we don't want to chase off, someone had said about chasing off business. We don't want to chase off business because part of public health is having a job and having insurance and all the other things that come with it. So, but this board is always very cognizant of that. And I think, again, I had said earlier about taking a victory lap. There's no chance to take a victory lap. And I think about I always point at that little board over there on the side, the great reductions that have happened. There was no technology that at that time when the standard was first lowered to get there. And it must have been this overwhelming feeling, but seeing the success of past board members and the money that's come to this program, because money equals reductions in a lot of ways. And it's just incentivizing, but people are more willing to adopt and not fight. But we don't see the technology probably today, but we know we're going to get there because technology changes so quickly. And so I'm very proud of the work of this board. I'm very proud of the work of staff and the CARB board and what has come before us. And I'm very pleased with this. So any other comments? Take the opportunity. Dr. Sheriff.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Samir. Thank you for your comments. I really do want to thank everyone who testified, and I also want to thank the advocacy community for their letter. I think thinking about those categories is helpful for us in terms of thinking about where other opportunities may lie in the future. I think Genevieve's comments we need to keep those in mind. Someone soon to be a mother, the carryover to the next generation of what we do, both in the good sense and in the worrisome sense. It's never fast enough what we do, but we always do, I think, need to worry about ways to do it sooner. This may be the happiest place to work, but in many ways, it's also the most uncomfortable place to work because I think everybody does understand that time is lives, time is health. And I feel, as I read the plan, I see a commitment to front loading, to paying attention to that. That the goal is not the end date, but doing as much as possible now to achieve that goal by that end date, and a real commitment to process. So thank you for the presentation and thank to the board for their support. One suggestion I want to have, CARB makes a list of testimony, and we don't usually have so much testimony. It'd be great if we always had so much testimony, but there's a list. People sign up. And there's no deadline for signing up, but it helps manage the testimony and it helps the board absorb the information, seeing who's going to testify, an organization that they may represent or a personal, and it helps us, I think, pay attention, and particularly when we get so much testimony, makes it a better process. So it's complicated, but something to think about for.
Thank you. Dr. Pacheco-Warner.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you for that call out. I do think that, as I mentioned before, it has been a collaborative process. And, thanks to the commenters, as I'm thinking about, yes, they're demanding more. Some of them, it's their job to demand more, right? Some of them, it's their daily lives, and as I think about myself with 2 kids under the age of 6, one of them with asthma, that is real to demand more always for them. And those years are critical for them. I know and I understand that. And I think that part of how we get more strategic, and if I knew that we could make a rule that would actually be able to be implemented around more zero emissions, around more stringent around boilers, for example, like I would be 100% on board, but I know that there are real infrastructure problems, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity. I know that we've done a lot of, in our legislative platform, a lot of advocacy around infrastructure, particularly in the mobile sector, and funding and all of that. And I wonder if there's opportunity for us to think more expansively next year in our legislative platform about how we prepare ourselves and push more and push the envelope. And if I don't think we want to bombard our folks at the PUC or anything, but I do think that there's an opportunity to continue to think about collaboratively how we're thinking about this as rules expand across the state around that may potentially affect how the Valley can afford to, because as I think about the wealth, the fireplace things, and I think about our region and what people actually earn in these rural areas, we've got to be real about that too. And so I think as we think about our legislative platform, how can we also begin to reach out to other entities in California as they're making their rules to inform them about what's best for the Valley, as well as we prepare to push the envelope on rules and more stringency to meet the pressing new standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Rickman.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Just a quick statement. I want to, thank everybody who called in and with their concerns. And hey, I share it too. I mean, I was born and raised here in the Valley, so I've seen what it was like 50 years ago to what it is today. And and there has been a significant improvement that has been made in our air quality. And a lot of it has to do with this board and CARB and so on. I mean, in fact, our efforts represent the nation's toughest emission control program. But one thing that it just continues to bug me to no end is that we all know that we live in a bowl in the Valley, and pollution, that all the pollution that we have here doesn't just start here. It comes from different areas. I mean, a lot of it comes from the Bay Area. And yet, San Joaquin Valley is the most heavily regulated in the state, one of the highest in the nation. Why isn't the Bay Area held at the same standard? We get their pollution here that our folks have to inhale. I mean, an example is in the Bay Area, they're still allow open ag burning. Why, we don't here. So why aren't they held at the same standard? We mentioned wildfire prevention, be it grass fire, or the forest fires, for example, the big one the campfire that we had here a few years ago. And hey, I was out there for that too. But we talk about forest management, and the state needs to get involved and do a better job at that, or provide funding to the localities so we can help out. And then you talk about electric vehicles and so on, the electric infrastructure. I know a gentleman mentioned that earlier about the lack of it. I mean, this is a prime example of what we have to deal with. And you're talking about the technologies and so on. Congress signed in, or I guess our president or the Fed signed into law in 2021, $7.5 billion package specifically directed toward EV chargers, right? And the goal of building 500,000 chargers in the United States by 2030. And according to a Washington Post article dated March of this year, there's been 7 stations in 2 years. So, we need the feds to step up and, help with this infrastructure. You want more people to buy electric vehicles, reduce emissions, help our air pollution. We need the infrastructure to do that. As with our ag industry also. I mean, you're talking about, a gentleman talked about pumps and getting that infrastructure that to those pumps so they can do their part. I mean, it goes far beyond just this board. And, we have done a lot. And I mean, in fact, what you're seeing now is battery storage. I'm using clean energy and to store in these batteries that we can use it during peak hours and so on. I know here in San Joaquin County, we have a few stations, but you mentioned working, having to work collaboratively with, the feds and state, and they're just some things that are, as Samir mentioned is outside our control. So I just wanted to give that quick statement. And if there's no other speakers, which I don't see on mine, I'll make a motion.
I'll take that as a motion. And we have a second.
I'll second the motion.
Our member Robinson already seconded. Thank you. All right, any other comments? Because I just want to make sure. No other comments, call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs,
Yes.
Ms. Sheklian,
Aye.
Ms. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for your effort, Emily, John, and Mr. Benjamin, if you're still on.
So, Mr. Chair, just as far as quick update on the agenda and time. So we have three action items actually. And so I'm asking the staff, and I may jump into to get to recommendations on these, just given where we are with the calendar. So we're going to give it a shot and just kind of go fairly fast here. Just bear with us as far, please, your patience will be appreciated. So it's going to be, like the 1 minute version for each of these. And we'll drill down as needed on questions, but it'll be for sure rapid fire here.
Okay, this is item 11. It's the approval of the advertising and marketing agency representation for comprehensive multilingual public education outreach. Jamie.
My name is Jamie Holt. I'm the Chief Communications Officer. I'm going to go fast based on what he just said. There's lots on the presentation. Please read through it. We have a great strategy. It's based on some board objectives. We went through a formal RFP process in 2021, and our current vendor, Archer & Hound, was deemed best value. We can renew that up to 5 years. This will be the fourth of that potential 5-year term. They work under our direction, and we get a lot of value from them. Primarily, we've negotiated down from a 15% commission rate to a 10% commission rate. That all gets reinvested with significant additional in-kind advertising and agency hours. We're very strategic in how we place our media, making sure that we're getting the most impressions. That's eyeballs on the things we're placing. We also do a layered media approach. That is that we stack our messages so that you might see them on social media, and then you might see them on your big sporting event, and then you might see an ad, a Google ad when you're going to look for, you're looking at maybe buying a new wood burning device. We often exceed our goals. You can see there for the winter, we were 183% above our goal for the number of impressions and 144% over goal. We do traditional media, that's television, radio, billboards, print, online streaming, that's your Hulu, your Pandora, your Roku, your Samsung TV, Google ads, search engine optimization, and social media. These are some examples of our outreach. Scope of work is a variety of things. During the summer, it's kind of see what you can do to drive less to reduce your emissions. During the winter, it's don't use your wood burning device, upgrade your wood burning device, incentive programs, community engagement, protect yourself when air quality is poor due to wildfires or other air quality events. The basics, it's an $878,000 contract. It is in the budget that you approved today. It is a 12-month contract that aligns with our fiscal year. It can be terminated with a 30-day notice. We do monthly invoicing. We review monthly invoice, proof of performance, make sure that everything's being tracked and monitored on a regular basis. The recommendation is that you approve this today. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I did go very fast.
This is a 1 year of the 5-year potential. This is the first year.
This is actually the fourth year. The RFP was in 2021. And every year we annually renew.
Got it. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, to the public.
Okay, any public comments on this item in Bakersfield?
There are no public comments in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on it? Seeing none, we do have one online, Kylie Norville.
Hi, Kylie. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Kylie Norvell, and I'm here on behalf of Archer & Hound Advertising, and I would just like to thank the chair and the board and the staff for the opportunity to continue working with you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kylie.
Move approval.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second by the vice
Got a
chair.
girl.
Got a microphone on. Just call the roll.
Thank you. I'll call for roll. Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian,
Aye.
Ms. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Perfect. On to item 12, adopt proposed amendments to District Rule 2520, federally mandated operating permits.
Good afternoon. Morgan Lambert, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer. We currently have a Rule 2520, which is our, as the Chair said, our federally mandated operating permits rule that affects the largest sources of emissions here in the Valley. Due to some recent court decisions affecting the EPA, through a whole suite of their regulations, they had some provisions that allowed for some defense provisions if they had unforeseen emergency circumstances that people could potentially not operate in conformance with those federal rules. The court said that those were not appropriate to have. And so EPA has since taken a host of rulemakings to remove those provisions from their federal rules, which now affect our local rules. And so the purpose of this item today is to remove one such provision, which is in our Title V operating permit program. We went through a rulemaking process with public workshops, as well as commenting periods. Through that process, we have received no comments. And so today we are here recommending that you adopt the proposed amendments, which would remove these emergency defense provisions from our federal Title V operating permits rule.
All right. Any questions of Morgan? Seeing none, we'll go online.
Any public comments in Bakersfield?
There are no public comments in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none and none online.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Member Mendez and a second by Member Shuckman.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs,
Yes.
Ms. Shucklian,
Aye.
Ms. Nguyen,
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
On to 13, authorize use of service providers as necessary to support community engagement and approve the reallocation of community emissions reductions program incentive funding within the Stockton AB 617 community.
So, hi, I'm going to give a quick presentation on this. So I got Jess to make sure if I miss any key details, she can let me know. I'm going to give, get right to the point here. There are really two main recommendations here. You've, as a board, have heard a lot about these in the recent past, so I'm not going to get into the background on it. We've been doing major community engagement through AB 617. Part of our ability to do that is working with facilitators, interpreters, and others to provide a number of different services that are part of the community engagement process that continues to just get better and better over time. And so once again, this year, this is identical to last year's recommendation. We are recommending that we have that authority to once again secure the services that are needed to support this very important community engagement. It's only growing, and Jess's team, her and her team, work very hard to continue broadening the effect and the benefit of that effort so that we can actually receive input into our different processes over here. So that's the first recommendation, is related to our ability to use those services. The second recommendation is another one in line with some recent discussions you've been having, which is to reallocate some funding that we have in the community emission reduction program in the community of Stockton, to reallocate it from the school filtration measure into the clean vehicle program. And that's something that's very supported by the community steering committee. There's funding and other resources that have since the development of that plan that have been used to satisfy the school sort of filtration issue. And so this recommendation would move funding into, I'm seeing a nod from Jess. I think I'm getting this right. It would move, reallocate that funding from an area that doesn't actually need that funding at this point to one that's going to, I think, be a very high demand program in that community. They're very anxious to work with us to get that running. And you've heard examples of the success of that similar type of program earlier from earlier action by the board. So those are the two recommendations, and we're happy to take any questions if you have any.
You prepare all month to give your presentation and the executive director drops in and does it for you. It's good.
Thank you.
Seeing
and Jess is doing a great job in this effort. I think I might have mentioned that. It goes without saying here, but her and her team, just amazing work. We're partnering with our community steering committees and other community avenues that we're using to really help move this mission forward here. So good job, Jess.
Thank you very much. Out to the public.
Any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comments in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto? Are there any members of the public in Fresno that'd like to comment? Seeing none and no online comments.
Move approval.
So motion.
I'll second
Rickman. Warner beat him. That's good.
Okay, I'll call for roll. Also through the chair, Mr. Pereira has left the meeting. Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Dr. Pacheco Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriffs?
Yes.
Ms. Sheklian?
Aye.
Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
That's perfect. And there was one comment I heard about outreach, and that was during the previous item, a couple previous before, that there wasn't enough outreach. One thing I know about this organization is there's always a lot of outreach and opportunity to dialogue along the way. So again, I heard that through the 617. On to item 14, verbal report from the California Air Resources Board, Dr. Pacheco Warner.
My goodness. Thank you so much. I think that look forward to the ongoing discussion as our PM plan now goes to CARB, I believe in July. And so look forward to that continued engagement. Also, I wanted to let you all know that I've been very engaged locally and regionally as we look to adopt a zero emission forklift regulation next at the next meeting next week. And if anybody has anything they of concern in that rule, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On to item 15. Oh, any questions? No. Okay, on to item 15, Executive Director report.
All right, really quick. The Governing Board study session is now set for Wednesday, November 13th and Thursday, November 14th in downtown Visalia. We're really excited to bring the meeting there. There's a new air quality index. So those the AQI colors that you'll see, it's tied to the new PM standard. So we talked a little bit about this before, but I wanted to make sure everybody was aware that what that means actually is that you might see more yellow, what are called moderate days. And it's not that the air quality itself has changed at all. It's just that with the new standard, there's a bit of a difference in the, at what point a day goes from green to yellow. And so I just wanted to note that in case there were, something looked a little bit different to you. And so that's part of rolling out a new standard is also examining the AQI. And then lastly, I would just say that in Sacramento, there's a lot of activities related to budget funding. It's a very tough budget year. We're watching that very closely, and we'll continue reporting out as new information becomes available. But we are continuing to push as hard as we can for funding in a very difficult budget situation. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions of the Executive Director? On to board comments. Dr. Pacheco Warner.
Just a quick one. I just wanted to commend the district. This Saturday, they're having the Community Clean Air Day, and the agenda is just so amazing. Everybody who they've managed to put together in one room to talk about community engagement. People that don't always see eye to eye, but are working together and are marking some successes that the Air District has done. So just congratulations on that.
Excellent. Vice Chair Lewis.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, I want to give a heartfelt comment for our former employee, Tony Reyes, who I assume passed away recently. I don't know the date or anything like that, but it just really touched my heart to see all of the employees who came in to support him. And it shows the love that you all have one for the other and how you care for one another. So it really warmed and touched my heart to see that. And if he has a family, you know, my condolences go out to his family, and I wish them well and strength, and that they're able to carry on in life, because life does go on, even though we're not here. I just want to make a layperson's comment here in regards to our PM agenda item that we have. You know, this is definitely not scientific, and my naked eyes are my science and my nostrils are my science. But I want to thank Samir and the staff for the wonderful job that they continue to do to reduce pollution in our community. Just the other day, it came to my senses as I'm driving down 152 heading back to Los Banos, coming from this direction, that I could still see the mountains. And we haven't had any rain for a couple of months. So that's a big feat. There was a time when, after one day of rain had passed, that our valley was covered with smog and pollution. So we have made some really great strides in reducing pollution. I know that, you know, there are things out there that we still need to attain. And in the collaborative work that we do with CARBS and with EPA and any of the other organizations, I just feel like, you know, our staff has really bent over backwards to move things forward as quickly as they possibly can. And there are a lot of things that are involved. There's money, there's legislation, there's so many aspects of how something moves forward. And I know on the other side, people want it now. Everybody wants things now instantly, but nothing happens instant in this life except death and taxes. So I just want to give comment to our staff for the wonderful job that they're doing, to continue to move the agenda forward and to work on these matters regarding health in our valley. And, you know, we're doing a lot better than other organizations of our same type. And when I think about people driving up and down 99 and 5, and we still can see the mountains, that's a great thing. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your comments. Member Nguyen.
I've got to be faster on this button. Councilmember Lewis, I just want to echo as the newbie on this board and a mother of an asthmatic daughter and asthmatic granddaughter. I know our efforts are working. Her asthma has improved greatly in the last 10 years. She's over 40 years old. I appreciate the collaboration. I appreciate the fact that you have involved people of all different sectors, the ag, because it's so important to our community. And you have inspired, I think, the farmers that I know to, you know, they might grumble a little, but they understand. You've made it clear to them. You've given them incentives. And it's such an important part of our economy here, and not only in the valley, but to the world. I mean, we feed the nation. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you to the board as I stumble through my silly questions, and Samir too. And I just really appreciate this opportunity.
Appreciate those comments. It's again, stick with it. Don't get down for sure. There's because there's no other comments. There's not a day that doesn't go by just about that either Tom Jordan or Samir doesn't get a picture for me on a walk where I can see the mountains, and for the same reason. it's tangentially feels like the air quality is getting better. We know that because we're on the board. I just wanted to pass on one story because we tend to hear from more of the environmental justice community is more engaged with this board. And I got skewered the other day. I called Samir. I was having a little pity party from a farmer up in the San Joaquin area, just skewered me on the ag burning. And I went toe to toe with them on why we have to do what we have to do as a public health agency and why we did it. But I invited him to join us today. Always is, you want to be a part of the solution, jump on and make a difference. And I'm not sure if he was here today. I know we had lots of participants, but I encourage everyone. This is nice. We had 17 speakers today on one item that happens to be of interest, but I encourage all folks to participate. I know farmers tend to chew me out and then they don't participate. That's not right either. But it's not just farmers, right? It's all of the public. Everyone has a vested interest in the air they breathe and the
Well, you have a
businesses.
farmer sits right next to you.
That's right. And you complain to me the whole time.
That's right.
So, all right, with that, we do have a closed session.
Yes, thank you. We do have a closed session. There's 2 items under the closed session, both a pending litigation and then conference with labor negotiators, and we need to call for public comment on those.
Okay, are there any public comments in Bakersfield on the closed session?
No comments in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Modesto, do you have any public comments?
No public comments in Modesto.
Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none and none online.
Okay, we will convene to closed session and adjourn thereafter.
Do you expect a report out?
No.
No report out. Thank you.